In the far future of the 41st millennium, where faith bends steel and madness bleeds through the fabric of space itself, the Imperium had cataloged every known form of Xenos threat. They had faced the Eldar's cruel cunning, the Orcs' savage tides, the Tyranids' all-consuming hunger. They had endured 10,000 years of horrors that would shatter lesser civilizations. But on the 15th day of the month, the Administratum designated 741-M41, something fell from the void that defied every classification, every contingency protocol, every prayer the ecclesiarchy had ever composed. It was not heralded by warp storms or psychic screaming. No augury arrays detected its approach. The thing simply appeared in the upper atmosphere of Forge World Metallurgicus Prime, a violet streak that tore through real space like claws through parchment. Trailing energy signatures that made cogitator banks seize and servitors collapse with feedback burns across their augmetic implants. The object's descent burned a scar across the sky, visible from the planet's northern manufactorum belt. And when it struck the rust-red surface of the ferric wastes, the impact registered as a seismic event equivalent to macro-cannon bombardment. Skitarii patrols converged on the crater within the hour, their transports kicking up clouds of iron oxide dust that painted the sky the color of dried blood. What they found defied the Omnissiah's logic. The crater was perfectly circular, approximately 40 meters in diameter, with walls of glass formed from sand flash-melted by impossible heat. At the center, something moved. It was bipedal, roughly 2 meters tall, with violet-purple skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence. The entity possessed a distinctly feline face, elongated ears, and wore clothing that the Mechanicus tech priests would later describe as ornamental vestments of unknown material composition, possibly Xenos silk analog. Most disturbingly, the creature was sleeping. Not unconscious from impact trauma, sleeping with gentle snores that somehow carried across the crater, despite the wind. Skitarii Ranger Alpha Designate Helix 7 raised his galvanic rifle, targeting matrices painting the sleeping entity in overlapping fields of fire. His squad of 12 Rangers maintained firing positions around the crater's rim, their augmetic eyes zooming, analyzing, attempting to classify. The entity's bio readings were paradoxical. It registered as living tissue, but the energy output readings fluctuated between negligible and exceed maximum sensor threshold. Vox traffic crackled across encrypted channels as data streams flowed back to the Forge Cathedral complex. Unknown Xenos organism, bipedal, feline characteristics, awaiting Magos evaluation and termination protocols. Helix 7's voice was flat, emotion scrubbed by decades of indoctrination. The entity stirred. One eye opened, golden, with a slit pupil that fixed on the Skitarii with the casual interest of a predator noting an insect. Then it yawned, revealing fangs, and spoke. "Where's Whis?" The voice was male, irritated, carrying the petulant tone of someone rudely awakened. The entity sat up, looking around the crater with growing annoyance. "Whis? This isn't Universe 6. Did you fall asleep at the staff again?" Helix 7's targeting system screamed warnings as the entity stood. The movement was too smooth, too perfect, one moment prone, the next upright, without the transitional motions organic biology required. The Skitarii's threat assessment protocols escalated to crimson. "Identify yourself, Xenos. You stand upon sacred ground of the machine god. Comply or face purification." The cat-like being turned its full attention to the Skitarii for the first time. Those golden eyes narrowed, and suddenly every ranger in the squad felt the weight of something vast pressing down on them. It wasn't psychic pressure. The null field generators in their armor would have detected that. This was different. This was the sensation of standing before something that could simply decide they no longer existed. "I'm Beerus, god of destruction," the entity said, brushing dust off his clothing with fastidious annoyance. "And I seem to be lost. You wouldn't happen to have any food, would you? Preferably something with actual flavor. I've been asleep for..." He paused, frowning. "Actually, I'm not sure how long. The dimensional turbulence was murder on my internal clock." Helix 7 processed this statement. Xenos claiming divine status were not uncommon. The Eldar's arrogance was well documented. But something in his targeting matrices was failing. Every time he tried to maintain weapon lock on the entity designated Beerus, the system glitched. Not from electromagnetic interference. The machine's spirits simply refused to acknowledge the entity as a valid target, as though reality itself was uncertain whether this being could be harmed. "I'm hungry," Beerus continued, his tone shifting from annoyed to dangerous. "That's not a request you want to ignore. The last planet that made me wait for breakfast. Well, there isn't a last planet anymore. Do you understand?" The Skitarii opened fire. 12 galvanic rifles discharged simultaneously, sending electrically charged rounds downrange at hypersonic velocity. The ammunition was blessed, inscribed with litanies of destruction, designed to punch through Xenos armor and disrupt nervous systems with electrical payloads. They were weapons that had felled orc knobs and pierced Eldar wraithbone. Beerus caught one round between his thumb and forefinger, just plucked it from the air mid-flight, examining it with mild curiosity, while the other 11 rounds struck his body and simply stopped. Suspended in the air, centimeters from his skin, before falling harmlessly to the ground. "Rude," Beerus said. Then he flicked the captured round back toward the Skitarii line. The projectile moved faster than any weapon in the Imperium's arsenal. It punched through Helix 7's helmet, through his augmetic skull, through the cogitator arrays in his backpack, and continued through the transport vehicle behind him, before finally embedding itself in a rock formation half a kilometer distant. The Ranger's body stood for a moment, processing its own termination, before collapsing. The other Skitarii retreated, Vox channels screaming priority distress calls. But Beerus wasn't pursuing. He was looking at his hand, flexing his fingers with a frown. "That felt off," he muttered. "My energy control is sluggish. Is there something wrong with this universe's fundamental structure?" He raised his other hand, and a sphere of violet-purple energy manifested above his palm, swirling destructive force that made the air scream and the ground beneath him crack. "No, the power's there, just sticky, like moving through water." He dismissed the energy sphere and looked towards the retreating Skitarii with an expression of profound annoyance. "Fine, I'll find my own food. But if your civilization's cuisine is as primitive as your weapons, we're going to have problems." Beerus lifted off the ground, rising into the air without thrust, without wings, simply defying gravity through will alone. He hung there for a moment, surveying the rust-red landscape of Metallurgicus Prime, the distant manufactorum complexes belching pollution into the perpetually overcast sky, the crawling tracks of ore hauler vehicles, the towering statue of the Omnissiah dominating the horizon. "What a dump," he said, Then he flew toward the Forge Cathedral at a speed that created sonic booms across the ferric wastes, leaving the surviving Skitarii to report an encounter that would soon escalate into the Imperium's consciousness like a virus through the data stacks. Something new had arrived, something that considered gods a professional title rather than an aspiration, and it was very, very hungry. The Forge Cathedral of Metallurgicus Prime was a monument to the machine god's glory, a structure that dominated the landscape for 50 kilometers in every direction. Its spires pierced the polluted sky like accusing fingers. Its flanks bore the scars of 3 separate orc invasions, and its cogitator vaults contained manufacturing protocols dating back to the dark age of technology. 30,000 tech priests labored within its iron walls, attended by 200,000 servitors and protected by 12 full maniples of Skitarii. It was a fortress, a temple, and a factory simultaneously, the purest expression of the Mechanicus philosophy. Beerus landed on its primary landing pad without ceremony, setting down between 2 Arvus lighters with the casual disregard of someone who had never needed permission to go anywhere. The pad's defense turrets tracked him immediately, automated systems that responded to unscheduled arrivals with lethal force. Heavy bolters swiveled, targeting matrices locked, and for precisely 3 seconds, the cathedral's machine spirits prepared to reduce the intruder to component atoms. Then Beerus glanced at them, and the turrets stopped. Not from damage or interference, they simply ceased functioning, their machine spirits experiencing what tech priests would later describe as cascading logic failure induced by observational paradox. The weapons knew they should fire, understood the protocols demanded it, but confronted with Beerus's presence, they couldn't compute a scenario where their ammunition would matter. "Better," Beerus said, walking toward the main entrance. The cathedral's blast doors were designed to withstand orbital bombardment, 12 meters of blessed adamantium inscribed with 10,000 years of protective litanies. They were currently sealed, as they had been for the last 6 months during the Forge World's high-security protocols. Beerus examined them for approximately 2 seconds, frowned, and tapped the door with one knuckle. The blast doors exploded inward, torn from their hinges and propelled into the cathedral's receiving hall with enough force to crush 3 servitor maintenance units and leave a crater in the ferrocrete floor 30 meters deep. Alarms screamed, klaxons wailed. Somewhere in the cathedral's command sanctum, Magos Dominus Zikrathis 98 experienced something his centuries of augmentation had nearly eliminated: raw terror. Beerus walked through the ruined entrance, looking around the receiving hall with an expression of profound disappointment. The chamber was vast, designed to accommodate Titan-class war machines, its walls covered in copper, cabling thick as tree trunks, its ceiling lost in shadows and steam from countless ventilation systems. Servitors scattered before him, their limited cognition recognizing a threat their programming couldn't categorize. "Hello?" Beerus called out, his voice echoing through the mechanical cathedral. "I'm looking for whoever's in charge. And more importantly, I'm looking for food. Actual food, not whatever recycled protein paste you people probably subsist on." A blast door at the hall's far end ground open, and a Cataphron battle servitor rolled forward, a grotesque fusion of human torso and tracked weapons platform. Its cogitator-enhanced brain focused solely on threat elimination. Its heavy grav cannon charged with a whine that set teeth on edge, drawing power directly from the cathedral's plasma reactors. The weapon could reduce a Lehman Russ battle tank to its constituent atoms. Beerus watched the Cataphron approach with the same expression someone might give a mildly interesting insect. The servitor's targeting systems achieved lock. The grav cannon fired, unleashing a beam of gravitational force that had once collapsed a Necron monolith. Beerus caught the beam on his palm. The gravitational energy swirled around his hand, bending, distorting, unable to progress further. He examined it with clinical curiosity, tilting his head as purple energy from his own aura began to intermix with the gray-black gravitational distortion. Gravity manipulation? Crude, but functional. He closed his fist, and the grav beam collapsed into itself, creating a microsecond singularity that imploded with a sound like reality tearing. The Cataphron servitor sparked, its weapon systems overloading, and then simply fell apart, not destroyed by external force, but disassembled at the molecular level as Beerus's destruction energy rippled outward through the gravitational connection. "That's your security?" Beerus called out. "I've seen Universe 7's kindergarten guardians put up better fights." From the shadows above, 6 Sicarian infiltrators descended on grapnel lines, their transonic weapons already vibrating at frequencies designed to shatter molecular bonds. They were the Mechanicus's elite assassins, tech priests who'd sacrificed their humanity for perfect killing efficiency. Their neurostatic auras should have paralyzed most organic targets before combat even began. Beerus looked up at them, and the infiltrators experienced something their emotional suppression circuits weren't designed to handle: the recognition of absolute inferiority. But training and augmentation overrode survival instinct. They struck simultaneously, transonic blades aimed at major neural clusters, their movements synchronized to within microseconds. Beerus moved, not fast, beyond fast. One moment he was standing still, the next he was simply elsewhere, and 6 infiltrators discovered they'd struck only air. Before their targeting systems could recalculate, Beerus was among them, moving through their formation like a dancer through paper streamers. He didn't use destruction energy this time. He didn't need to. He simply tapped each infiltrator once, finger against chest plate, casual as someone testing if paint was dry. The adamantium armor crumpled like parchment. The augmetic systems within collapsed. The infiltrators fell, systems catastrophically failing not from energy damage, but from kinetic force, transmitted with such precision that it bypassed armor entirely and struck the delicate machinery beneath. "You're testing me," Beerus said to the empty air, his voice conversational. "I appreciate that. Reconnaissance before commitment. Very prudent. But I'm getting hungrier by the minute, and my patience isn't what you'd call extensive, even when I'm well fed." From deeper within the cathedral, Magos Dominus Zikrathis 98 watched through 1,000 optical feeds. His 17 cogitator-augmented brains working in parallel to process what they were witnessing. The entity's power output was impossible. Not merely high, impossible. The energy readings fluctuated between negligible and exceeds planetary annihilation threshold, with no middle ground, no transitional states. It was as though reality itself couldn't decide how much power the entity possessed. Worse, the entity's claims of divinity might not be metaphorical. The Mechanicus had extensive documentation on self-proclaimed gods, chaos entities that wore divinity like a mask, Eldar who channeled their pantheon's remnants, orc war bosses who achieved apotheosis through sheer belief. But this was different. This entity's energy signature shared no commonality with the warp. It was something else entirely. Something that operated on principles the Omnissiah's faithful had never encountered. Zykrathus 98 made his decision. He activated the Vox system cathedral-wide, his artificial voice carrying through every chamber and corridor. Entity designated Beerus. This is Magos Dominus Zykrathus 98, master of Forge World Metallurgicus Prime. Your trespass has been noted and evaluated. Your power has been witnessed and measured. We do not have time for extermination protocols. I propose negotiation. Beerus's ears perked up. Finally, someone with sense. I'm listening. Our Forge World possesses extensive sustenance production facilities. We maintain nutritional diversity for our human workforce. Throne knows they complain enough about meal quality. If you cease hostile actions, I will provide you access to our finest available cuisine. In exchange, you will answer questions regarding your origin and capabilities. Beerus considered this, floating a meter off the ground with his arms crossed. Finest available cuisine. That's a dangerous promise. I've destroyed planets for serving me substandard fish. Through the Vox, Zykrathus's voice carried a note of what might have been humor if such things could survive centuries of augmentation. Then let us both hope our culinary standards meet your expectations, Lord Beerus. Otherwise, I suspect we will have far greater problems than mere trespass. Beerus smiled, showing fangs. I like you. You're pragmatic. Fine, feed me, and we'll talk. But I'm warning you, if whatever you're serving tastes like motor oil, this cathedral becomes a crater. 20 minutes later, Beerus sat in what had been Zykrathus's personal meditation chamber, a space normally reserved for communion with the machine god's mysteries. Before him, servitors laid out plate after plate of food requisitioned from the Forge World's officer mess halls. Roasted grox haunch, spiced protein bars enhanced with genuine flavor additives, even a jar of Terran honey that had cost the Forge World's entire cultural exchange budget. Beerus ate a bite of grox meat, chewed, swallowed. His expression was unreadable. Then he set down the utensils and looked at Zykrathus, who stood attended by 8 Skitari Praetorians, their power weapons ready despite the obvious futility. 2 out of 10, Beerus said. Maybe 3 if I'm being generous. The meat's overcooked, underseasoned, and whatever animal this came from clearly had a miserable life. The honey's decent, actual honey at least, not synthetic, but everything else tastes like desperation given physical form. Zykrathus's optical sensors focused on the god of destruction. That is the finest cuisine available on Metallurgicus Prime. Then your civilization has bigger problems than you realize, Beerus said. But I did promise to talk, and a god of destruction keeps his word. What do you want to know? Magos Dominus Zykrathus 98 had witnessed wonders and horrors across his 3 centuries of service to the Omnissiah. He had communed with machine spirits older than the Imperium itself, deciphered standard template construct fragments that lesser minds would never comprehend, and survived the Third Orc incursion by personally piloting a Warlord-class Titan after its princeps died at the controls. He considered himself beyond surprise, his emotional responses carefully calibrated and controlled by 17 cogitator implants. Yet as he stood before Beerus, watching the entity casually dismiss the Forge World's finest cuisine as barely edible, Zykrathus experienced something his augmentations couldn't suppress. Fascination mixed with existential dread. You claim the title god of destruction, Zykrathus began, his mechadendrites unconsciously coiling tighter around his torso, a vestigial stress response his organic components retained. Elaborate on this designation. Are you a warp entity? A Cetan shard operating outside documented parameters? A xenopsyker of unprecedented capability? Beerus leaned back in his chair, which groaned under the casual pressure of his presence, despite being reinforced adamantium designed to support Terminator armor. None of those things. I'm exactly what I said. A god of destruction. Capital G, capital D. In my universe, I'm one of 12 such gods, each responsible for maintaining cosmic balance by destroying planets, civilizations, sometimes entire solar systems that have outlived their usefulness or become threats to universal order. Your universe. Zykrathus's processors latched onto that phrase, running probability calculations. You claim to originate from an alternate reality. Not alternate, separate, different dimensional frequency entirely. Beerus examined his fingernails with the air of someone discussing the weather. My attendant, Whis, an angel who serves me, was transporting me between universes for a social obligation. Gods of destruction from different universes occasionally meet for meals, competitions, that sort of thing. Anyway, Whis must have miscalculated the dimensional coordinates. One moment I was asleep in transit, the next I was falling through your atmosphere. Zykrathus's 17 brains worked in parallel, cross-referencing this information against millennia of Mechanicus cosmological data. Alternate dimensional theory existed in fragmentary texts, forbidden knowledge from the dark age of technology that suggested reality was more complex than the simple material-immaterial dichotomy the Imperium accepted. But those theories had never been proven, never been demonstrated with actual trans-dimensional entities. If your claims are accurate, Zykrathus said carefully, then you represent a category of being outside the Imperium's established taxonomy. You are neither demon, nor xenos, nor human, nor machine. You are other. Finally, someone gets it. Beerus stood, stretching with a yawn that revealed his full dental arrangement, fangs designed for rending, not human pattern omnivorous teeth. I was worried I'd have to destroy something to prove I'm not bluffing. That gets tedious. Your power output suggests you could. Zykrathus gestured, and hololithic displays materialized around them, showing sensor data from Beerus's brief conflict with the Skitari and Sicarians. Our auger arrays registered energy fluctuations equivalent to cyclonic torpedo detonations during your disagreement with our security forces. Yet you show no signs of exhaustion, no weapon systems, no apparent power source. The energy simply emanates from your physical form. Kai, Beerus said. Life energy, though calling it that doesn't do it justice. In my universe, all living things produce ki. Most never learn to manipulate it. Warriors train for decades to use it effectively. Gods like me. He held up one finger, and a small sphere of violet-purple energy manifested above it, swirling, crackling, radiating power that made the meditation chamber's machine spirits scream warnings through the Vox system. We're born with it at levels that would make your mightiest weapons look like children's toys. Zykrathus's sensors screamed alerts as they attempted to analyze the energy sphere. The readings were contradictory, paradoxical. The energy signature was simultaneously matter and not matter, existing in a quantum state that violated known physics. More disturbing, it registered as antithetical to existence itself, Not destructive in the conventional sense of explosive force, but erasure. The sphere didn't damage matter, it negated it. That is... Zykrathis paused, searching his vast lexicon for adequate terminology. That is Hakai energy, destruction energy. It's not psychic. My null field generators detect no warp contamination. It's not conventional energy. It violates conservation laws. It simply is, and anything it touches ceases to be. Correct. Beerus dismissed the sphere with a casual gesture. I can destroy anything. Planets, stars, living beings, even conceptual entities if they annoy me sufficiently. It's literally my job description. Though I'll admit, something about this universe is making it sticky. My energy control feels sluggish, like I'm moving through syrup. It takes actual concentration rather than idle thought. Environmental incompatibility, Zykrathis hypothesized, his processors racing through calculations. Your power operates on physical laws native to your home universe. This reality's fundamental constants differ slightly. Quantum field variations, dimensional frequency misalignment, perhaps interference from our immaterium. Your what? The warp, the immaterium, the realm of souls and demons that exists parallel to material reality, pressing against it, bleeding through where reality grows thin. Zykrathis watched Beerus's expression shift from boredom to interest. You truly don't know? Then you are freshly arrived indeed. The warp is complicated. It is emotion given form, belief made manifest, where the gods of chaos dwell and consume the souls of the damned. Beerus frowned, and the temperature in the meditation chamber dropped 5 degrees. Gods of chaos? You have gods here? Entities that claim godhood, Zykrathis clarified quickly, recognizing danger in that tone. 4 major powers and countless lesser beings, born from the psychic energy of mortal emotions, rage, despair, ambition, pleasure. They are not gods in any organized sense. They are predators that wear divinity as camouflage. Then they're frauds. Beerus's voice carried contempt. In my universe, gods are appointed. We're created by higher powers, beings called angels and grand priests who serve the Omni King. We have specific duties, specific jurisdictions. These chaos gods sound like parasites that got too big for their own good. Zykrathis filed this information away, his processors already composing reports that would reach the Inquisition within hours. An entity claiming legitimate divine appointment, speaking of cosmic hierarchies and appointed duties. Viewing the chaos gods as illegitimate pretenders, the theological implications were staggering. The ecclesiarchy would either try to canonize Beerus or burn him as the ultimate heretic. Possibly both. Your assessment is not entirely inaccurate, Zykrathis admitted. Though I would advise caution in expressing such views. The Imperium of Man, the civilization that controls this sector of space, has strong opinions about divinity. They worship one being as God Emperor, and they do not tolerate competing claims. Worship. Beerus's expression shifted to confusion. Why would anyone worship a god? We're not there to be prayed at. We're there to do a job. Balance, destruction, creation. These are functions, not relationships. You misunderstand the fundamental nature of this reality, Zykrathis said, and for the first time, his artificial voice carried something like sympathy. In this universe, belief has power. Faith shapes reality. The Emperor of mankind has been dead for 10,000 years, sustained only by sacrifice and prayer. Yet his psychic presence shields humanity from annihilation. The Chaos Gods exist because mortals feel emotions strongly enough to birth them. Even the orcs, a Xenos species, make technology function through collective belief rather than proper engineering. This is not your ordered cosmos with appointed gods and clear hierarchies. This is a universe where meaning is fought over, where every belief system battles for dominance, where gods are made and unmade by the strength of their followers' conviction. Beerus stood silent for a long moment, processing this information. His expression cycled through confusion, disgust, and finally something like comprehension. So, you're telling me I've landed in a universe where gods aren't born, they're imagined into existence. Where reality itself is negotiable based on who believes what most strongly. Essentially, yes. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, Beerus said flatly. And I once met a universe where fish ruled through musical theater. How does anything function? How do you know what's real? We don't, Zykrathis replied. We establish orthodoxy through force. The Imperium's truth becomes reality because we have the guns and ships to enforce it. The Mechanicus's understanding of technology becomes correct because we're the only ones who can maintain civilization's infrastructure. The Emperor's divinity is real because 1 trillion souls believe it hard enough to make it so. We exist in a constant war, not just for territory, but for meaning itself. Beerus was quiet, staring at the meditation chamber's walls with an expression Zykrathis couldn't quite read. Then he laughed, a short, sharp bark of genuine amusement. No wonder this place is such a mess. You don't have gods maintaining order. You have nightmares pretending to be gods, mortals pretending to serve them, and everyone fighting over whose delusion gets to be official doctrine. He turned to face Zykrathis fully, his golden eyes gleaming with something that might have been anticipation. This is either going to be incredibly boring or incredibly interesting. I haven't decided which yet. What will you do? Zykrathis asked, the question that had been building since Beerus's arrival finally escaping his vocalizer. You are stranded in an unfamiliar universe with no apparent means of return. Will you seek alliance with the Imperium? Will you attempt to return home? Will you simply exist? Beerus shrugged, a gesture of magnificent indifference. Right now, I'm going to find better food. Your cuisine is depressing, which means somewhere on this planet, or this sector, or this galaxy, there must be something worth eating. After that, he smiled, showing fangs. I'll probably destroy something. It's what I do. The question is whether I destroy something that deserves it, or something that simply annoyed me. That part usually depends on how good the food is. Zykrathis' 17 brains simultaneously calculated the implications of that statement and reached the same conclusion. Metallurgicus Prime had approximately 6 hours before Beerus's patience ran out. Maybe less if he got hungry again. I will contact the sector administrator, Zykrathis said. His mechadendrites already interfacing with the Forge World's long-range Vox systems. And the Inquisition, and possibly the High Lords of Terra. You represent a situation beyond my authority to handle. Good luck with that, Beerus said, already walking toward the chamber's exit. But do it quietly. I hate being disturbed when I'm looking for food. And Magos, thanks for being reasonable. You'd be surprised how many civilizations start with weapons and diplomacy. Second, it never ends well for them. As Beerus left, Zikrathes stood alone in his meditation chamber, surrounded by hololithic displays showing impossible power readings and theological paradoxes given flesh. He composed his emergency transmission to the Ordo Xenos, choosing his words with the care of someone delivering civilization's potential obituary. A god has fallen from the heavens, not in metaphor, in fact, and he is very, very hungry. The message from Forge World Metallurgicus Prime reached Inquisitor Lord Curaean Vex 47 hours after Beerus's arrival, transmitted via astropathic relay with a priority classification that ensured it bypassed standard bureaucratic channels. Vex read the report 3 times, her augmetic eye cross-referencing every detail against the Ordo Xenos' extensive xenological databases, while her organic eye narrowed with professional suspicion. The report was madness. An entity claiming divine status, demonstrating power that exceeded anything in the Imperium's threat classification system, with no apparent connection to the warp and technology that didn't register as technology at all. The Magos' sensor data showed energy outputs that fluctuated impossibly, weapon demonstrations that violated physics, and worst of all, casual indifference to the Imperium's authority. Vex had hunted gene stealers through underhive warrens, interrogated Eldar Farseers until their alien minds broke, and personally executed a chaos cult that had infiltrated 3 subsectors. She had seen horrors that would drive lesser souls to madness. But this report triggered something deeper than fear. It triggered the recognition that the Imperium's cosmological models might be fundamentally incomplete. She assembled her retinue within 6 hours. 2 squads of Grey Knights, the Imperium's ultimate answer to demonic threats, gene-enhanced space marines trained specifically to combat warp entities, a Culexus assassin whose blank soul would disrupt any psychic power, 3 Jokairo weaponsmiths, Xenos tolerated for their inexplicable ability to enhance technology beyond human capability, and her personal warband, veterans who had survived 30 years of hunting the galaxy's worst nightmares. The journey to Metallurgicus Prime took 4 days. 4 days during which Vex reviewed every scrap of information Zikrathes transmitted. Beerus had, apparently, spent those days wandering the Forge World's industrial sectors, sampling food from worker cafeterias, officer mess halls, and even servitor nutrient paste dispensaries. His reviews were universally negative. The Forge World's morale was deteriorating as workers whispered about the purple-skinned entity that appeared without warning, ate their rations, and vanished before Skitarii patrols could respond. More concerning were the reports of Beerus's casual demonstrations of power. A maintenance servitor had malfunctioned near him, sparking and threatening to explode. Beerus had glanced at it, and the servitor had simply ceased to exist, not exploded, not been destroyed, but erased so completely that even its molecular bonds unraveled. A drunk worker had thrown a bottle at him as a joke. Beerus had caught it, examined the label, taken a sip, spat it out in disgust, and vaporized the entire distillery complex with a finger beam that carved through 3 kilometers of industrial architecture. 0 casualties, Zikrathes noted in his reports. Beerus was precise in his destruction, surgical even. He wasn't rampaging. He was bored, irritated, and apparently capable of atomizing anything that annoyed him without collateral damage to bystanders. That precision was almost more terrifying than mindless destruction. It suggested intelligence, control, and most dangerously, standards. Vex's ship, the unyielding orthodoxy, entered Metallurgicus Prime's orbital space with weapons hot and void shields at maximum. The Forge World's defense platforms tracked them, but held fire. Inquisitorial authority superseded local military command. The landing was textbook perfect, her Thunderhawk setting down on the Forge Cathedral's primary pad with the Grey Knights deploying in practiced formation. Zykrathus met them at the entrance, his mechadendrites twitching with what Vex recognized as anxiety, poorly suppressed by augmentation. Inquisitor Lord Vex, the Omnissiah's blessing upon your arrival. The entity designated Beerus is currently 3 kilometers northeast, in Sector 7's agricultural dome. He discovered we maintain a small garden complex for medicinal herb cultivation and has been sampling the produce. Has he made any hostile moves since your initial contact? Vex asked, her retinue forming up around her. The Grey Knights were silent, their psychic hoods thrumming with suppressed power, their Nemesis Force weapons humming with anti-demonic energies. Define hostile, Zykrathus replied. He destroyed a distillery, 3 cafeterias, and what he described as an insult to cuisine masquerading as a restaurant. However, he has harmed no living beings since the initial Skitaria engagement. He appears to be conducting a comprehensive survey of our food production capabilities and finding them universally inadequate. Vex processed this. A being of unlimited destruction, methodically critiquing food quality. It was absurd. It was also the kind of detail that made her instincts scream warnings. Powerful entities who focused on mundane concerns were often the most dangerous, because it suggested they had nothing to fear. Take me to him, Vex ordered. The agricultural dome was an anomaly on Metallurgicus Prime, a concession to the biological needs of the Forge World's human population. Unlike the industrial sectors with their smoke and rust, the dome was green, humid, filled with the scent of growing things. Servo skulls tended to herb gardens, while tech priests monitored soil composition and growth rates with religious fervor. Beerus sat on a stone bench near the central fountain, eating what appeared to be a tomato. He bit into it, chewed thoughtfully, then nodded with what might have been approval. Not terrible. Needs salt, but the base quality is decent. First thing I've eaten on this world that didn't taste like industrial runoff. Vex approached with her retinue spread in a semicircle formation, not threatening, but positioned to respond if needed. The Grey Knight's psychic presence was palpable, a pressure in the air that would make demons scream. The Culexus assassin's blank aura should suppress any psyker within 50 meters. Beerus looked up at them, swallowed his bite of tomato, and smiled. More visitors. You're all much better armed than the last group. I'm guessing you're the ones who give orders rather than take them. I am Inquisitor Lord Curaean Vex of the Ordo Xenos, Vex announced, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. By the power vested in me by the God Emperor of mankind, I demand you submit to questioning regarding your origin, capabilities, and intentions within Imperial space. Beerus stood, and the Grey Knights tensed. He was shorter than most of them, less physically imposing than the gene-enhanced warriors in their blessed armor. But something in his posture, the casual way he held himself, suggested that size was irrelevant to whatever hierarchy his species observed. God Emperor, Beerus repeated, tasting the words. The Magos mentioned that. You worship your leader? That seems like poor management structure. Leaders should lead, not be worshipped. Worship creates distance, makes you think they're infallible. He paused, tilting his head. Also, I'm sensing something from you. Pressure. Like there's something trying to push at my mind. But it's weak. Very weak. Is that supposed to do something? The Grey Knights exchanged glances. Their psychic suppression should be overwhelming to any warp-touched entity. Vex's augmetic eye cycled through vision modes, searching for any sign of sorceress protection, demonic pacts, or technological shielding. She found nothing. Beerus simply stood there, entirely unbothered by psychic power that would make a demon prince hesitate. "You claim to be a god," Vex said, shifting tactics. "Demonstrate your power. Prove you are not simply a xeno-psyker with delusions of grandeur." "You want a demonstration?" Beerus looked around the agricultural dome, then up at the sky visible through the transparisteel ceiling. The rust-red clouds of Metallurgicus Prime's perpetually polluted atmosphere. "Fine, but I'm not doing anything flashy here. You've got nice tomatoes growing, and I'd hate to ruin them." He pointed one finger upward. No charging time, no visible energy buildup, no psychic distortion that the Grey Knight's senses could detect. Just a casual gesture, like pointing out a cloud. A beam of purple-white energy, thinner than a lasgun shot, lanced from his fingertip through the dome's ceiling, through the atmosphere, and into space. The hole it left in the transparisteel was perfectly circular, edges smooth as glass. No cracks, no structural damage, just a neat puncture that somehow didn't trigger pressure loss. Then the sky changed. Through the hole and spreading outward, the clouds began to dissipate. Not blown away by wind, but simply ceasing to exist. The beam had continued into orbit, and now it struck the polluted upper atmosphere. The centuries of accumulated industrial waste that gave Metallurgicus Prime its permanent overcast. Where the energy touched, pollution vanished. Not burned away, not scattered, but erased with the precision of someone cleaning a window. Within 30 seconds, a clear patch of sky appeared above the Forge Cathedral. For the first time in 3 centuries, the people of Metallurgicus Prime saw stars in daylight. Beerus lowered his finger. The beam ceased. "That's about 1/10% of my power. Less, actually. I wasn't even really trying. Just cleaning up your air a little. You're welcome." Vex's augmetic eye recorded energy readings that made no sense. The beam's power output was measurable, approximately equivalent to a lance battery from a Dictator-class cruiser. But the efficiency was impossible. No heat buildup, no energy waste, no collateral damage. Just targeted erasure of matter at the molecular level. "That was not psychic power," Brother Captain Arvex of the Grey Knights said, his voice filtered through his helmet's vox grill. "No warp signature, no demonic taint, no soul binding. That was something else entirely." "I told you," Beerus said, sitting back down and picking up another tomato. "I'm not from around here. Your warp doesn't touch me. I operate on different rules. And before you ask, no, I'm not interested in pledging loyalty to your emperor, joining your military, or becoming whatever it is you want me to become. I'm here accidentally, and I'm staying until I figure out how to leave, or until something interesting happens." Vex's mind raced through protocols, contingencies, threat assessments. Everything in her training screamed that Beerus was a threat of the highest order, an entity of immense power with no loyalty to the Imperium, no fear of its weapons, and apparently no connection to any known power system. He could be a precursor to invasion, an advanced scout, or simply what he claimed, a lost god from another universe. But her instincts, honed by 3 decades of reading beings who lied for survival, told her something crucial. Beerus wasn't lying. He was bored, irritated, and honest. That made him either the greatest threat the Imperium had ever faced, or potentially something else entirely. "What would you do?" Vex asked carefully. "If the Imperium attempted to contain or eliminate you?" Beerus finished his tomato, considering the question with apparent seriousness. "Depends. If they send soldiers or ships, I'd destroy them. Quickly, probably painlessly if I'm in a good mood. If they send diplomats or negotiators, I'd listen. I'm not unreasonable." He stood again, brushing off his hands. "But understand this, I'm a god of destruction. Destroying things is literally my purpose. The difference between me and whatever monsters you usually face is that I destroy with intent, with precision, for reasons. I don't consume, I don't conquer, I don't corrupt. I simply end things that need ending." "And who decides what needs ending?" Vex asked. "I do," Beerus said simply. "That's what being a god means." The standoff in the agricultural dome lasted exactly 17 seconds after Beerus's declaration, before Inquisitor Vex made her decision. She had 3 options: attempt containment and risk planetary annihilation, order an immediate assault and guarantee it, or pursue the one avenue her training suggested, but her pride resisted: negotiation from a position of acknowledged weakness. She chose survival over pride. "Stand down," Vex ordered, and the Grey Knights lowered their weapons fractionally, though their psychic hoods continued their silent vigil. "Lord Beerus, the Imperium faces threats across 1,000,000 worlds. If what you claim is true, if you are indeed a god of destruction who operates with purpose rather than malice, then perhaps we can establish a working relationship rather than mutual annihilation." Beerus's expression shifted from dangerous to merely interested. "Now that's more like it. Someone who understands that posturing wastes everyone's time. What did you have in mind?" "Information exchange," Vex said, her tactical mind already working through possibilities. "You claim to be stranded. We have access to technologies, archives, and resources spanning thousands of worlds. Perhaps within the Imperium's collected knowledge lies something that could aid your return home. In exchange, you answer our questions about your capabilities and refrain from destroying anything important." Define important. "Inhabited worlds, critical infrastructure, anything containing more than 10,000 human lives." Vex watched Beerus's face for reaction. "And in the interim, we could direct you toward cuisine that might actually meet your standards. The Imperium spans countless cultures. Somewhere in our territory there must be food worth your approval." Beerus's ears perked up noticeably at that last part. "You're bribing me with food. Bold strategy. I respect it." He walked toward Vex, closing the distance until they stood 3 meters apart, close enough to speak quietly, far enough that her retinue could react if needed. "But understand something, Inquisitor. I'm not joining your organization. I'm not becoming a weapon you point at your enemies. I'm agreeing to not destroy things randomly while I figure out my situation. That's all." "That's acceptable," Vex said, and meant it. An entity of Beerus's power operating independently was dangerous, but at least it was predictable. Trying to control him would only trigger the exact destruction they were trying to avoid. There is, however, one immediate complication we need to address, which is, your existence is no longer secret. Metallurgicus Prime has a population of 30 million. Thousands have witnessed your demonstrations. The Forge World's communications are already spreading rumors across the sector. Within days, word will reach Terra itself, and when it does, others will come. The Ecclesiarchy will send preachers to determine if you're holy or heretical. The Administratum will send bureaucrats to classify you. Chaos cultists will attempt contact. Rival inquisitors will arrive with their own agendas. Vex's augmetic eye word, focusing. You've created a theological crisis simply by existing. That sounds like your problem, not mine, Beerus said, but his tone suggested he understood the implications. Though I can see how it might become my problem if enough annoying people show up. Magos Zikrathis, who had been observing silently from the dome's entrance, stepped forward, his mechadendrites gesturing at hololithic projections. If I may interject, there is precedent for entities of immense power existing within Imperial space without formal allegiance. The Eldar maintain their craft worlds. The Adeptus Mechanicus guards its independence through treaty. Even certain rogue traders operate beyond normal jurisdiction. The key is establishing mutual benefit sufficient that no faction finds elimination worthwhile. You want me to become a mercenary, Beerus said flatly. I'm suggesting you become too valuable to destroy and too dangerous to ignore, Zikrathis corrected. A neutral force that occasionally acts in ways beneficial to Imperial interests without formal obligation. The Imperium has dealt with such arrangements before. Vex nodded slowly. The Magos was right, even if the solution was diplomatically complex. There is something else, an immediate situation where your particular talents might prove useful and where success would demonstrate your claims convincingly. I'm listening, Beerus said, crossing his arms. 12 days ago, the agri-world of Tantalus V went silent. Last transmissions indicated a Tyranid splinter fleet had entered the system. Scout ships confirm the planet has been completely overrun, every city infested, all defenders consumed. The planetary defense force reduced to genetic material for the hive mind. The Tyranids are currently in the digestion phase, converting the planet's biomass into more Tyranids for their endless swarm. And you want me to destroy them, Beerus finished. The Imperium has lost 37 worlds to this particular splinter fleet, Vex continued. Standard containment protocols have failed. Our options are limited to exterminatus, complete planetary destruction, or committing Space Marine chapters that are desperately needed elsewhere. But if you could eliminate the infestation without destroying the planet itself, you would save billions of lives on the worlds this fleet would consume next. Beerus was silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, describe these Tyranids. Are they intelligent or just hungry? Hungry, Vex said. But not mindlessly so. They're directed by a psychic gestalt consciousness called the hive mind, billions of organisms thinking as one, adapting, evolving, consuming. They feel no fear, accept no negotiation, seek only to feed and reproduce. They are arguably the most dangerous Xenos threat the Imperium faces, because they cannot be reasoned with or deterred. They can only be destroyed. So they're pests, Beerus said, and his smile showed fangs. I've destroyed planets for less than pest control. Fine, I'll deal with your Tyranid problem. But I have conditions. Name them. First, I want access to whatever food exists in this sector that doesn't taste like despair. Real cuisine, prepared by people who actually care about flavor. Second, I want access to any records or technology you have related to dimensional travel or universe traversal. Third, he paused, his expression becoming serious. I want honesty. No tricks. No attempts to weaponize me against targets you're too afraid to admit you want destroyed. No secret agendas. I can sense lies better than you think. Try to deceive me, and I'll take it personally. Vex considered these conditions. The first was trivial. Arranging culinary access was simple logistics. The second was potentially dangerous. Dimensional technology was forbidden archaeotech. But if Beerus could leave this universe, perhaps that was preferable to him remaining as a permanent wild card. The third was actually reassuring. Entities who demanded honesty were easier to work with than those who expected deception. Agreed, Vex said. I'll arrange transport to Tantalus Vivith immediately. My ship can reach the system in 4 days. 4 days? Beerus looked surprised. How slow is your transportation? Actually, never mind. I'll find my own way there. Just give me the coordinates. Zykrathis transmitted the stellar coordinates via data slate, which Beerus examined with obvious confusion. What is this? A star map? This notation system is needlessly complicated. Just tell me which direction and how far. Approximately 14 light-years bearing, Zykrathis began, but Beerus cut him off. 14 light-years? That's, what, a few hours? Less if I push. He looked at their expressions and laughed. You people don't have casual interstellar flight, do you? You actually need ships and whatever warp travel is. How primitive. Fine, I'll meet you there. Try not to take too long. Before Vex could respond, Beerus simply vanished. Not teleportation. There was no psychic signature, no warp ripple, no technology activation. One moment he was standing before them, the next he was simply gone. Brother Captain Arvex's psychic senses detected nothing. The Culexus assassin's blank field registered no disturbance. Every augur in the agricultural dome confirmed the same impossible fact. Beerus had moved from standing still to gone without transitional states, without displacement, without any detectable mechanism. 30 seconds later, Zykrathis' orbital sensors registered an energy signature departing Metallurgicus Prime's gravity well at approximately 40% of light speed. It was Beerus, flying through the void without suit or ship, leaving a trail of purple-white energy as he accelerated toward the Tantalus system. That, Brother Captain Arvex said quietly, is not a psyker. That is not a demon. That is something we have no framework to understand. No, Vex agreed, watching the sensor data with a mixture of awe and dread. But if he's telling the truth about his purpose, about being here accidentally with no agenda beyond eating and leaving, then he might be the most fortuitous accident the Imperium has experienced in 10,000 years. And if he's lying, Arvex asked. Vex didn't answer immediately. She watched the energy signature disappear beyond sensor range, watched Beerus fly toward a planet of horrors that would drive normal humans mad with fear, flying casual and alone toward a threat that required entire battle fleets to contain. If he's lying, she finally said, then we're already dead. We just don't know it yet. 3 hours into Beerus' flight through the void, he discovered something unfortunate. Space was boring. Incredibly, unbelievably boring. In his own universe, he'd traveled between planets instantaneously via Whiss's staff or through his own techniques, blinking across solar systems in moments. But here, moving at what felt like sluggish speeds through absolute nothingness, There was nothing to do, nothing to see, and nothing to eat. He passed several planets during his journey, but sensor readings from his Chi-enhanced senses suggested they were either uninhabited rocks or populated by the same grim civilization that had greeted him on Metallurgicus Prime. He was tempted to stop, to sample cuisine, but the Inquisitor had promised food worthy of his attention in exchange for pest control. Better to complete the job first, establish credibility, then leverage that into actual culinary access. The universe around him was strange. His Chi sense, usually reliable across entire galaxies, felt muted, like trying to hear through water. He could detect life signs on distant worlds, but the readings were corrupted by something else. A psychic pressure that pervaded space itself, pressing against reality like an infection. That warp the Inquisitor mentioned. Beerus made a mental note to investigate it later, after food and after determining whether this universe contained anything worth destroying beyond pest control. As he flew, he considered his situation with growing irritation. Weiss would be looking for him, certainly. But dimensional barriers were tricky. If Beerus had been knocked into a universe with different fundamental frequencies, Weiss might not even be able to sense where he'd gone. It could take centuries to find him, possibly longer. Which meant Beerus was stuck here, at least temporarily. Stuck in a universe where gods were parasites, where civilization tasted like ash, where traveling between stars took hours instead of seconds. But it wasn't all bad. The Inquisitor had mentioned endless wars, constant threats, galaxy-spanning conflicts. That suggested entertainment, at least. And entertainment was almost as important as food. Besides, he was a god of destruction. His purpose was to destroy things that needed destroying, to maintain cosmic balance through selective annihilation. This universe clearly had plenty that needed destroying. The Inquisitor's casual mention of chaos as an eternal threat, these tyrannids that consumed worlds, probably a dozen other nightmares lurking in the dark. Maybe, Beerus thought, as Tantalus V's son appeared in his sight, this wouldn't be such a terrible place to be stranded after all. Then he sensed the planet itself, and his expression shifted from boredom to something like professional interest. Tantalus V's surface was covered in life signs. Trillions of them, packed so densely that they registered as a single massive organism. But the signatures were wrong, twisted, simplified, all variations of the same basic template repeated endlessly with minor mutations. Not a civilization, a plague, a cancer given form and purpose. So these are tyrannids, Beerus muttered to himself, accelerating toward the planet. Let's see if they taste better than they look. He entered the atmosphere at speeds that should have incinerated him, riding friction like a wave, purple energy crackling around his body as he descended toward the infested surface. The tyrannids below registered his approach, and the hive mind turned its attention upward, regarding this new anomaly with an intelligence born from consuming 1,000 species. Beerus smiled, showing fangs, as the ground rushed up to meet him. Finally, something to do. Beerus landed in what had once been Tantalus V's capital city, a metropolis of 12 million souls that now existed only as architecture overrun by organic corruption. Tyrannid biomatter covered everything. Purple-veined flesh stretched across buildings like fungal growths. Capillary towers pulsed with transported nutrients, and spore chimneys belched clouds of reproductive matter into the atmosphere. The streets crawled with lesser organisms, Termagants scuttled between reclamation pools. Hormagaunts stalked through ruins searching for overlooked biomass. Ripper swarms consumed structural materials too small for larger organisms to bother with. The moment Beerus's feet touched ground, the entire city went silent. Millions of organisms stopped mid-action, their individual minds subsumed by the hive mind's sudden, absolute focus. They turned toward him, not with eyes exactly, but with biosensory organs evolved across 1,000 species, with psychic awareness that operated on frequencies the Imperium barely understood. The hive mind regarded Beerus and experienced something unprecedented: uncertainty. This organism registered as biomass, yet its energy signature was incompatible with consumption protocols. Its physical form suggested protein-based life, yet it had survived atmospheric entry and now stood radiating power that defied biological limits. The hive mind queried its genetic memory banks, cross-referencing against every species it had ever consumed, and found no match. Beerus looked around at the tyrannid infestation, his expression shifting from interest to disgust. "This is vile. You've turned an entire planet into an intestinal tract." He kicked at a puddle of digestive fluid, watching it splash against a wall of organic matter. No wonder the locals wanted this destroyed. This isn't conquest, it's desecration. The hive mind reached a decision. Unknown variables were either consumed or eliminated. It sent the order. 10,000 termagants opened fire simultaneously, their flesh-bore weapons launching beetle-sized organisms that burrowed through armor to devour victims from within. The living ammunition converged on Beerus from every angle, a swarm of burrowing death that had overwhelmed Imperial Guard regiments. Beerus's aura flared purple, and every single flesh-borer beetle disintegrated before reaching him. Not burned, not deflected, but unmade at the molecular level by destruction energy that treated living ammunition the same as any other matter. The termagants continued firing, their limited individual intelligence incapable of recognizing futility. The hive mind, however, recognized it immediately and escalated. Carnifexes burst from reclamation pools, living tanks armored in chitinous plates, meters thick, armed with crushing claws and biocannons. They charged with ground-shaking steps, bellowing challenges through throats designed for intimidation. Behind them came hive tyrants, synapse creatures that served as the hive mind's direct avatars, their sword limbs crackling with bioelectric charge. Beerus watched them approach, with the same expression someone might give an interesting insect. "You're all the same organism, aren't you? Every one of you just an extension of something larger. That's actually fascinating from a biological standpoint. Completely horrifying, but fascinating." The first Carnifex reached him, raising its crushing claw to pulverize this impossible prey. Beerus raised one finger and tapped the creature's armored skull. The Carnifex's entire head exploded, not from external force, but from internal pressure, every cell in its brain simultaneously trying to occupy the same space, a localized spatial compression that reduced its nervous system to paste. The body stumbled forward 2 more steps before collapsing. 1, Beerus counted. 3 more Carnifexes attacked from different angles. Beerus moved, and where he'd stood a moment before, the 3 organisms collided with each other, tangling in a mess of limbs and confusion. Beerus appeared behind them, having moved faster than their enhanced reflexes could track. 2, 3, 4, he said, tapping each creature's spine. They collapsed like puppets with cut strings, their neural systems simply ceasing function. The hive tyrants attacked with coordinated precision, their sword limbs cutting through air where Beerus had been microseconds before. They were faster than the Carnifexes, smarter, capable of tactical thinking beyond simple charge and kill. They spread out, attempted flanking, used the terrain, demonstrated battlefield intelligence that had defeated Space Marine tactical squads. Beerus let them try for approximately 10 seconds. Then he stopped moving and let one sword limb strike him directly in the chest. The blade shattered. Chitin, bone, and bioforged cutting edge designed to slice through ceramite armor fragmented against Beerus's skin like glass against steel. The hive tyrant experienced something its species had never felt: complete biological inadequacy. Its strongest natural weapon couldn't even scratch this prey. Beerus grabbed the broken sword limb and tore it off. The hive tyrant shrieked, though whether from pain or shock was unclear. "You're trying," Beerus acknowledged. "I appreciate that, but you're fundamentally outmatched. Watch." He held up his free hand and generated a sphere of destruction energy the size of a marble. It pulsed violet purple, reality bending around it, gravity distorting slightly from the concentrated power. Then he threw it, not at the hive tyrant, but into the ground. The sphere sank through biomatter, through street material, through bedrock, descending into the planet's crust. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the entire city block began to disintegrate. Not explode, disintegrate. Buildings, biostructures, tyrannid organisms, everything within a 100-meter radius simply unmade itself, breaking down into constituent molecules, and then atoms, and then nothing. The sphere created a perfect hemispherical void, erasing matter without debris, without dust, leaving only emptiness. The hive mind recoiled. This was unprecedented. This was wrong. Tyrannids consumed. Tyrannids adapted. Tyrannids evolved to overcome any threat through biological iteration. But this entity wasn't threatening them. It was negating them. Existence itself rejected tyrannid matter where that purple energy touched. Beerus walked toward the nearest reclamation pool. A massive pit where hundreds of thousands of organisms had been liquefied for genetic processing. The pool contained enough biomass to birth a new hive fleet, carefully cultivated genetic material representing centuries of consumption and adaptation. He looked down into the churning organic soup, made a disgusted sound, and then placed his palm flat on the surface. Purple energy spread from his hand like ink in water, flowing through the pool, converting its contents from living matter to nothing. Within seconds, the massive reclamation pool was empty, just a crater lined with inert stone. "This is what I do," Beerus announced to the planet, to the hive mind, to the billions of organisms suddenly realizing they faced something their evolution hadn't prepared them for. "I destroy, not conquer, not consume, not corrupt. I simply end things that need ending. And you," he gestured at the infested cityscape, "you definitely need ending." He rose into the air, ascending above the capital until the full scope of the infestation was visible. From this height, Tantalus the Phytho looked like a diseased organ, purple and brown corruption covering what had once been green continents and blue oceans. The Tyrannids had worked fast, converting an entire world in less than 2 weeks. Beerus raised both hands above his head, destruction energy gathering between his palms. Not a sphere this time, a sun. Purple-white light built and built, growing until it outshone Tantalus Thief's actual star, until the energy output registered on sensors across the entire system. The hive mind recognized extinction. It diverted every organism on the planet toward escape, driving them toward bioships buried in the planet's crust, toward spore pods capable of surviving void travel, toward any mechanism that might preserve genetic material. But Beerus was faster. Hakai! He spoke the word casually, almost bored, and released the energy sphere. It fell toward the planet like a miniature star, accelerating, growing larger, its gravitational pull actually dragging smaller, tyrannid organisms into the air to meet their annihilation. When it struck, there was no explosion. There was simply removal. The destruction energy spread across Tantalus V's surface in a wave, following the root-like connections of the tyrannid infestation. Wherever it touched, tyrannid matter ceased to exist, biostructures unmade, organisms disintegrated. The hive mind's presence evaporated like morning mist. The wave didn't harm the planet itself, didn't crack the crust, didn't boil the oceans, didn't disturb human structures that had survived the initial invasion. It simply erased everything tyrannid, removing the infestation with surgical precision. Beerus floated there, watching his work complete itself, destruction energy sweeping across continents in minutes. When it finished, Tantalus Thief looked almost as it had before. Cities damaged but intact, landscapes scarred but recovering, completely sterile of tyrannid contamination. There, Beerus said to himself, pest control complete. Now about that food they promised. 4 days later, when Inquisitor Vex's ship entered the Tantalus system, every auger array aboard the unyielding Orthodoxy screamed impossible readings. The planet that should have been a tyrannid feeding ground registered 0 biosigns beyond baseline bacterial life. The atmospheric contamination that typically accompanied hive fleet digestion was absent. Even the psychic presence of the hive mind, that endless, gnawing hunger that pressed against psychers' minds from light years away, was simply gone. Tech Priest Valence, Vex commanded from her command throne. Confirm those readings. Tell me our sensors are malfunctioning. Sensors are operating within acceptable parameters, Inquisitor, the ship's senior tech priest replied, his mechadendrites twitching nervously as they interfaced with the auger systems. Tantalus Thief reads as cleansed, completely cleansed. No tyrannid biosignatures detected. Atmospheric composition returning to pre-infestation baselines. Structural damage to cities confirms previous invasion, but no remaining organic contamination. Brother Captain Arvex stepped forward, his psychic hood humming as he extended his consciousness towards the planet. The warp is calm here, unnaturally calm. Usually, a world so recently touched by tyrannids carries psychic scarring, echoes of consumption, impressions of horror. But this place feels scrubbed, as though something removed not just the physical presence, but the memory of their existence. Vex felt something cold settle in her stomach. She'd hoped Beerus would damage the tyrannid forces, perhaps reduce their numbers enough that Imperial forces could complete the extermination. She'd privately calculated that even an entity of his apparent power would need weeks to fully cleanse a planet-wide infestation. The tyrannids were nothing if not thorough in their corruption. Begin planetary scan, Vex ordered. I want a full assessment. Population centers, infrastructure status, any surviving Imperial forces. And find Lord Beerus. He should still be planetside. The scan took 3 hours, with scout ships dispatched to investigate major population centers, while the unyielding orthodoxy maintained high orbit. What they found defied strategic doctrine. The capital city, formerly the center of Tyranid reclamation operations, was structurally intact but completely sterile. Buildings stood damaged but stable. Streets showed battle scars, but not a single fragment of Tyranid biomatter remained. Not corpses, not digestive pools, not even the microscopic spores that typically infested conquered worlds for decades. In the ruins of what had been the planetary governor's palace, they found Beerus. He sat on a throne that had survived 3 centuries of governance and 2 weeks of Tyranid occupation, eating what appeared to be ration bars taken from an imperial supply depot. His expression suggested deep dissatisfaction. "These taste like compressed sadness," Beerus announced as Vex's landing party approached, flanked by Grey Knights and her personal retinue. "I've been here 4 days waiting for you people, and the only food on this planet is emergency rations that expired a decade ago. This is not what I was promised." Vex stepped forward, removing her helmet to reveal her augmetic eye and scarred features. "Lord Beerus, we detected no Tyranid presence. Did you eliminate the infestation?" "Obviously," Beerus said, tossing aside the ration bar with disgust. "That's what you hired me to do. I destroyed every single organism on this planet that was part of their collective consciousness. Took about 6 minutes once I got serious about it. The rest of the time I've been sitting here being bored and hungry." 6 minutes, Arvex repeated, his voice flat with disbelief. "You cleansed an entire planet of Tyranid infestation in 6 minutes. Would have been faster, but I had to make sure I didn't accidentally destroy the planet's actual ecosystem. Your Tyranids burrowed deep, had root structures extending into the mantle, required precision to erase them without destabilizing tectonic plates." Beerus stood, stretching with a yawn that showed his fangs. "Now, about that food you promised. Real food, not this compressed despair. Where is it?" Vex exchanged glances with Arvex. The strategic implications were staggering. A Tyranid splinter fleet that had consumed 37 worlds, that would have required years of military commitment to contain, eliminated by one entity in less time than it took to conduct a planetary assault. If Beerus could be persuaded to address other Tyranid threats, entire sectors could be saved. But that line of thinking was dangerous, and Vex knew it. Entities of ultimate power who served others inevitably became weapons, and weapons inevitably turned on their wielders. The nearest agri-world with actual culinary culture is Bellarmine III, Vex said carefully. It's known throughout the sector for its vineyards and feast halls. I can arrange transport immediately, and while we travel, I'll brief you on what we've learned about dimensional breach technology from our archives. Beerus's ears perked up. You actually found something useful? The Mechanicus guards certain Dark Age technologies, Vex admitted. Most are forbidden, dangerous, or incomprehensible, but Magos Zykrathis has compiled references to several devices that allegedly manipulated dimensional boundaries. The Geller field technology that protects ships in warp travel operates on similar principles, creating barriers between dimensions. If we could reverse engineer the theory, it might give me a way home, Beerus finished. Fine, I'll tolerate your slow transportation and learn about your primitive dimensional technology. But the food better be worth it, Inquisitor. My patience has limits. The journey to Bellarmine III took 6 days through warp travel, 6 days during which Beerus discovered he profoundly hated the Immaterium. The ship's Geller field protected them from demonic incursion, but Beerus could feel the warp pressing against the barrier, chaotic, hungry, fundamentally wrong in ways that offended his divine sensibilities. In his universe, reality had structure, order, laws enforced by beings appointed specifically for that purpose. Here, reality itself seemed negotiable, held together by faith and desperation. He spent most of the voyage in the ship's library, studying what little the Imperium understood about dimensional mechanics. The texts were frustrating, half religious doctrine, half fragmentary technical data, all of it written by people who feared their own knowledge. But beneath the superstition, Beerus recognized genuine understanding. These humans had discovered dimensional travel through the warp, even if they didn't fully comprehend what they'd achieved. "Your Geller field technology is interesting," Beerus told Vex during one of their meetings in the ship's strategium. Hololithic displays showed Bellarmine III's approach vector, but Beerus ignored them, focused on the dimensional theory data slate in his hands. "It creates a bubble of stable reality by projecting, what did your tech priest call it? The Emperor's light manifested through blessed machinery. The technical explanation involves quantum field manipulation and reality anchoring," Vex said, though her tone suggested even she found the Mechanicus's explanations suspect. "The practical result is that it prevents the warp's influence from penetrating the ship's interior. Without it, we'd be torn apart by demons or driven mad by psychic pressure within minutes. Except it's not preventing influence, it's creating a dimensional frequency mismatch," Beerus corrected, his divine perspective cutting through theological obfuscation. "Your ship exists in material space while traveling through immaterial space. The Geller field maintains that separation by generating a resonance that keeps dimensional boundaries distinct. It's actually quite clever, even if you people have no idea why it works." Vex studied Beerus with her augmetic eye, recording this conversation for later analysis. "You understand dimensional mechanics naturally. This is common knowledge in your universe." "I'm a god," Beerus said, as though that explained everything. "Understanding reality is part of the job description. In my universe, travel between dimensions requires navigating 12 distinct dimensional frequencies, each with its own physical laws. Angels like Weiss can do it instinctively. Gods can manage with effort. Mortals," he paused, considering. "Mortals usually die attempting it. Your species somehow stumbled into dimensional travel through this warp thing and survived. That's either incredibly lucky or incredibly desperate." "Both," Vex admitted. "During the Age of Strife, humanity was scattered across the galaxy with no means of communication or travel. When the warp storms calmed and the Emperor unified Terra, warp travel became our only option for interstellar civilization. We understood early that it was dangerous, that we were traveling through literal hell, but the alternative was extinction through isolation." "Pragmatic," Beerus acknowledged. "Still doesn't explain why your food is terrible, though. You've had thousands of years to develop decent cuisine." Before Vex could respond, klaxons screamed throughout the ship. The strategium's hololithic displays shifted to tactical mode, showing a new contact emerging from the warp dangerously close to their position. Brother Captain Arvex was on the bridge instantly, his psychic senses already identifying the threat. "Chaos vessel," Arvex reported, his voice grim. "Despoiler-class battleship, heavily corrupted. They're hailing us." Ignore them, Vex ordered immediately. Prepare to... I'm curious, Beerus interrupted, looking at the hololithic display with interest. You mentioned chaos before. Parasites pretending to be gods. Are these their worshippers? Traitors who've pledged themselves to the ruinous powers, Vex confirmed, her hand moving to her bolt pistol instinctively. Humans who've been corrupted by promises of power, driven mad by warp exposure, or simply chosen damnation over duty. They're beyond redemption, beyond negotiation. All we can do is destroy them before they destroy us. Or corrupt us, Arvex added, his nemesis force weapon already in hand. Chaos worship is mimetic. It spreads through contact, through exposure, through the simple act of witnessing their rituals. Even seeing them can plant seeds of corruption in weak minds. Beerus stood, walking toward the viewport where the Chaos vessel was now visible. A massive warship covered in mutations, its hull bearing 8-pointed stars and inscriptions that hurt to look at directly. Demonic faces leered from its armor plating, and the space around it rippled with warp distortion. I want to talk to them, Beerus said. Absolutely not, Vex said immediately. Lord Beerus, these are not ordinary enemies. Chaos corrupts through conversation, through philosophy, through offering power and freedom. Even your strength might not protect you from... Inquisitor, Beerus interrupted, his tone patient but firm. I appreciate your concern, but I'm a god of destruction. I've met actual gods of evil, entities whose entire purpose was corruption and domination. Some tried to bribe me, some tried to threaten me. One particularly stupid demon god tried to challenge me to combat. They all ended the same way. He smiled, showing fangs. Let me talk to your Chaos worshippers. I promise it'll be educational. Vex wanted to refuse, wanted to order the ship into emergency warp jump and flee before the Chaos vessel could close engagement range. But something in Beerus's expression, absolute confidence without arrogance, certainty without doubt, made her hesitate. She'd witnessed his power on Tantalus Fief, seen the aftermath of destruction so precise it bordered on artistic. If anyone could resist chaos corruption through sheer existential incompatibility, perhaps it was a god from another universe entirely. Open a channel, Vex ordered against every instinct screaming warnings. But Lord Beerus, if you feel even a moment of temptation, if you hear voices offering power or knowledge, sever the connection immediately. Noted, Beerus said, though his tone suggested he considered the warning unnecessary. The hololithic display flickered, and a figure appeared. A Chaos space marine, his armor painted in the colors of the Black Legion, covered in profane scripture and demonic trophies. His helmet was removed, revealing a face twisted by mutation, eyes that burned with warp fire, and a smile that suggested centuries of damnation. Imperial vessel, the Chaos Marine spoke, his voice layered with demonic harmonics. You flee toward Bellarmine III, a world soft and ripe for conversion, but you will not reach it. The War Master's blessing is upon us, and your souls will... On board already, Beerus interrupted. Let me guess, you're going to threaten us, promise power if we surrender, maybe mention your dark gods and how inevitable our defeat is. Do you people have any original material? The Chaos Marine paused, apparently thrown by this response. You dare mock the War Master's chosen? We are the parasites, Beerus finished. Mortals who traded their integrity for power they don't understand, worshipping entities that aren't actually gods. I've met your kind before, different universe, same pathetic story. Someone offered you strength, promised you'd matter, and you were weak enough to believe them. The Chaos Marine's expression shifted from surprise to rage. I am Calyx the Despoiler, favored of Abaddon, blessed by the primordial truth. I have slaughtered worlds in the name of chaos undivided. Your words mean nothing, you insignificant. Beerus raised one finger, pointing at the hololithic display. Destruction energy gathered at the tip. Not much, just enough to make a point. The energy signature was so intense that every psyker aboard both ships felt it simultaneously, a pressure against reality itself. I'm Beerus, god of destruction, Beerus said calmly. I've destroyed galaxies because they bored me. I've erased gods who actually earned the title. And I can tell just from looking at you that you're not worth the energy it would take to properly destroy your ship. He paused, letting that sink in. But I'll do it anyway because you're annoying. Consider this a professional courtesy, one destroyer to another. Except you destroy for masters who don't respect you, while I destroy because it's literally my divine purpose. You know nothing of power, Calyx roared, his voice distorting with demonic influence. The gods have shown me truth beyond your comprehension. They offer... Beerus flicked his finger. The tiny beam of destruction energy traveled across space instantly, striking the Chaos vessel's bridge. There was no explosion, no dramatic fireball. The bridge section simply ceased to exist, a perfect hemispheric void carved from the ship's superstructure. Calyx, whatever demons empowered him, and every corrupted soul on that bridge unmade in less than a second. The Chaos vessel drifted, its remaining crew panicking as their champion vanished, their bridge exposed to void, their corruption suddenly feeling inadequate against whatever had just spoken to them. There, Beerus said, lowering his hand. Lesson delivered. Your chaos gods couldn't protect him. Your corruption couldn't save him. He simply ended because I decided he should. He looked at Vex, his expression serious. That's the difference between real gods and pretenders. Inquisitor, real gods don't need worship. We just are. The destruction of Calyx the Despoiler's bridge sent shockwaves through both the Materium and the warp. Aboard the crippled Chaos vessel, the remaining crew experienced something unprecedented. Doubt. For centuries, they had believed themselves blessed by powers that transcended mortality, that their corruption granted them superiority over the false emperor's servants. But Beerus had unmade their champion with the casual dismissal one might give an insect, and the chaos gods themselves had done nothing to prevent it. In the warp, the four ruinous powers stirred with something approaching concern. They had sensed Beerus's arrival in the Materium weeks earlier, an entity whose soul signature registered as both divine and utterly alien. They had attempted contact, sending whispers through the immaterial realm, offering power and knowledge and pleasure and martial glory. Every offer had slid off Beerus's consciousness like water off steel. He simply didn't hear them, or more disturbingly, heard them and found them beneath consideration. Khorne, god of blood and war, recognized a destroyer when he witnessed one. But Beerus destroyed without rage, without the beautiful fury that fed the blood god's existence. His destruction was casual, professional, divine purpose, executed with the same emotional investment someone might give to household chores. Tzeentch, architect of fate, attempted to glimpse Beerus's future and found only paradox. The god of destruction's timeline existed outside the warp's normal causality, branching in directions that violated the changer of ways understanding of fate itself. Every prediction collapsed into quantum uncertainty. Every scheme designed to manipulate him failed before implementation. Nurgle, grandfather of plague, sensed life in Beerus but couldn't touch it. The god of destruction's Kai-based existence operated on principles antithetical to entropy, his life force burning with an intensity that prevented decay, that refused corruption at the fundamental level. Slaanesh, Prince of Pleasure, attempted seduction and found no purchase. Beerus experienced desire for food, for entertainment, for returning home. But those desires were concrete, achievable, utterly disconnected from the endless hunger that fed the Dark Prince's existence. The Chaos Gods reached a consensus. Beerus was not a threat to be corrupted or controlled. He was something else entirely. An invasive species from another reality whose presence disrupted the careful balance of corruption and resistance that defined this universe. He would need to be eliminated, or at minimum, driven away. But to do that, they would need champions of unprecedented power, warriors blessed beyond normal limits. They would need to deploy assets normally reserved for Black Crusades and galactic catastrophes. They began their preparations. Meanwhile, Beerus had already forgotten about the Chaos Vessel. The unyielding orthodoxy continued its journey to Bellarmine III, and he returned to studying dimensional theory with the focused intensity of someone who genuinely wanted to understand rather than merely use. Vex observed him through surveillance feeds, watching a god from another universe pore over fragmentary human knowledge like a scholar in an archive. He treats forbidden technology like textbooks, Brother Captain Arvex observed, standing beside Vex in the observation chamber. No fear, no reverence, just clinical analysis. It's refreshing, actually, and disturbing. He sees reality differently than we do, Vex said, her augmetic eye recording every moment. To us, the warp is a realm of horror and madness that we navigate through faith and desperation. To him, it's just another dimension operating on different physical laws. He's not impressed by our demons, because he's met actual gods. He's not corrupted by chaos because, from his perspective, they're not offering anything he doesn't already possess. Can he truly return home? Arvex asked. Or is he simply occupying himself while stranded here permanently? Vex didn't answer immediately. She'd been asking herself the same question. If Beerus remained in this universe indefinitely, his presence would fundamentally alter the strategic balance. The Tyranids would become manageable. Chaos incursions could be countered by an entity they couldn't corrupt. Even the Necrons and their reality-warping technology might prove vulnerable to destruction energy that operated outside known physical laws. But that assumed Beerus would help. He'd made clear he wasn't joining the Imperium, wasn't becoming a weapon, wasn't interested in their wars beyond what entertained or fed him. He was a wild card, unpredictable despite his apparent honesty. If he stays, Vex finally said, we need to ensure his presence benefits the Imperium more than it threatens us. That means keeping him fed, entertained, and pointed at enemies rather than Imperial worlds. It means managing a god who takes orders from no one. The Administratum will hate that, Arvex noted with something like amusement. As will the Ecclesiarchy and the High Lords. Possibly the Emperor himself, if he still notices such things from the Golden Throne. They can hate it all they want, Vex said flatly. The alternative is attempting to eliminate Beerus, which, based on what we've witnessed, would result in casualties beyond calculation. Better to have him as neutral force than active threat. The Vox system crackled. Inquisitor, we're approaching Bellarmine III. The planet is hailing us with standard greeting protocols. No signs of chaos, corruption, or Xenos activity. Orbital defenses are standing down in recognition of inquisitorial authority. Excellent, Vex said. Prepare Lord Beerus's shuttle and contact the planetary governor. I want their finest culinary establishment prepared for our arrival. Spare no expense. This is officially classified as critical diplomatic operation. Arvex raised an eyebrow behind his helmet. We're spending inquisitorial resources on feeding an extra-dimensional entity. We're investing in keeping him satisfied enough that he doesn't destroy anything important, Vex corrected. There's a difference. Bellarmine III was what the Imperium classified as an agri-world, but that designation undersold its cultural significance. Unlike grim factory worlds that produced nutritional paste or prison farms that grew corpse starch, Bellarmine III had maintained genuine culinary tradition across 5,000 years of imperial rule. Its vineyards produced wine that graced High Lord tables on Terra. Its feast halls trained chefs who served planetary governors and rogue traders. Its agricultural guilds treated food production as art rather than mere sustenance. The planet's capital, Abundancia, sprawled across fertile valleys where 3 rivers converged, its architecture deliberately elegant rather than purely functional. Gardens filled with non-native species, maintained at great expense, provided ingredients that existed nowhere else in the sector. The planetary governor, Lord Matthias Vardane, treated his world's reputation with religious fervor, understanding that culture and cuisine were shields against the Imperium's homogenizing brutality. When Inquisitor Vex's message arrived, announcing her impending visit with a guest of unprecedented diplomatic importance, Vardane mobilized his planet's culinary resources with the efficiency of a military operation. Within hours, Master Chef Torrance Blackwell, whose creations had once made a Space Marine chapter, Master Weep with Joy, received orders to prepare a feast worthy of legends. An entity from another universe, Vardane explained, as Blackwell stood in the governor's palace, trying to process the impossible briefing. One who judges civilizations by their cuisine and possesses power to destroy planets if dissatisfied. The Inquisitor was very clear. This is not hyperbole. This being eliminated an entire Tyranid infestation in minutes and executed a Chaos Champion with less effort than we'd give to swatting a fly. Blackwell, a man whose entire existence revolved around transforming ingredients into transcendent experiences, felt something he'd thought his decades of training had eliminated. Panic. What are his preferences? Dietary restrictions? Cultural considerations? Unknown, Vardane admitted. The Inquisitor reports he's feline in appearance, bipedal, claims to be a god. He's reviewed everything we've offered so far as inadequate. Your task is to create something that impresses a being who has presumably eaten across multiple universes. That's impossible, Blackwell said flatly. Then improvise, Vardane replied. Because if you fail, we might not survive to regret it. 3 hours later, Beerus descended from the inquisitorial shuttle, stepping onto Bellarmine III's soil for the first time. He breathed deep, his enhanced senses analyzing atmospheric composition, detecting trace elements that suggested rich soil, clean water, and most importantly, diverse agricultural production. Better, Beerus announced to Vex, who descended behind him with her retinue. This planet actually smells like food grows here. Real food, not recycled proteins and synthesized nutrients. Bellarmine III takes pride in its culinary heritage, Vex said, gesturing toward the governor's palace visible in the distance. Governor Vardain has prepared what he assures me is the finest meal his world can produce. If this doesn't meet your standards, Lord Beerus, then I fear nothing in Imperial space will. We'll see, Beerus said, but his tone suggested cautious optimism rather than his usual dismissal. The feast was held in the palace's grand hall, a chamber designed for diplomatic banquets and important celebrations. Long tables displayed Bellarmine III's bounty, roasted game from the southern highlands, fresh-caught fish from the Azure Bay, vegetables grown in soil enriched by centuries of careful cultivation, fruits engineered over millennia to achieve perfect sweetness, wines that represented decades of aging in blessed casks. Beerus sat at the head table, examining the spread with an expression Vex couldn't quite read. Blackwell stood nearby, watching with the intensity of someone whose entire career rested on the next few minutes. Governor Vardain maintained diplomatic silence, wisely recognizing that this moment transcended politics. Beerus selected a piece of roasted game, a Highland grox prepared with herb reduction and served with root vegetables. He ate one bite, chewed slowly, swallowed. Then he took another bite. Blackwell's tension eased fractionally. Third bite. Fourth. Beerus finished the entire portion, then reached for the fish course, seared base with citrus glaze. Same careful consideration, same multiple bites. He sampled the wine, swirled it professionally, and actually nodded approval. 6 out of 10, Beerus finally announced, and the hall went silent. Maybe 7 for some dishes. The game is properly prepared. Good seasoning, careful cooking, actual flavor. The fish is fresh. Technique is solid. The wine is legitimately excellent. He paused, selecting a piece of fruit. This is the first meal I've had in this universe that didn't taste like desperation or industrial accident. But only 6 out of 10? Blackwell asked, professional pride warring with relief. Your ingredients are limited by this universe's generally poor state, Beerus explained, his tone almost sympathetic. Everything tastes slightly off, like the fundamental components aren't quite right. It's not your fault. Your technique is actually impressive given what you're working with. But compared to universe-class cuisine, from places with proper agricultural development and species that evolved specifically for flavor, he shrugged. 6 out of 10 is honestly generous. Vex realized what she was witnessing. Beerus wasn't being cruel or dismissive. He was being honest from the perspective of someone whose standards included literally universal comparison. To him, this feast, which would have impressed rogue traders and satisfied Space Marine chapter masters, was merely adequate because he'd eaten food from civilizations that didn't spend 98% of their resources on survival. However, Beerus continued, taking another drink of wine. This is acceptable. I can work with acceptable. Chef, he looked at Blackwell directly. You have genuine talent. In my universe, you'd be training under masters on Universe 7's finest worlds. Here, you're making the best of limited resources. I respect that. Blackwell bowed, and for the first time in 30 years of cooking, he felt simultaneously insulted and honored. Governor Vardain, Beerus said, turning his attention to the planetary ruler. I'm claiming this world as my temporary residence. I'll stay here while studying dimensional theory and planning my return home. In exchange, I'll refrain from destroying anything important and deal with local threats if they become annoying. Consider it rent. Vardane processed this statement, an extra-dimensional god claiming his world as a hotel, and made the only logical decision. Bellarmine III welcomes you, Lord Beerus. Our resources are at your disposal. Excellent, Beerus said, already reaching for another dish. Now, Chef Blackwell, tell me about your techniques. I'm curious how you achieve that herb reduction without proper fusion cooking methods. As Beerus and Blackwell fell into technical discussion about cuisine, Vex stood with Arvex near the hall's entrance. Watching a god from another universe bond with a human chef over shared appreciation for food preparation. This is the strangest diplomatic arrangement in Imperial history, Arvex observed. It's also the most successful, Vex replied. He's happy, therefore he's not destroying anything. He's established residence rather than remaining mobile, which means we can track him. And he's essentially offered to serve as Bellarmine III's guardian, probably the most powerful defensive asset any agri-world has ever possessed. The Administratum is going to classify this incorrectly, Arvex predicted. They'll try to formalize it, create treaties, demand service in exchange for continued residence. And we'll prevent that, Vex said firmly. Because the moment someone tries to control Beerus, this arrangement collapses, and we're back to having an uncontained god wandering Imperial space looking for entertainment. Better to let him stay here, eat his 6 out of 10 meals, and occasionally destroy our enemies when they annoy him. Above them, through the palace's crystal ceiling, Bellarmine III's twin moons rose over the valleys. The planet's people celebrated below, unaware that their world had just become the residence of something that could erase them from existence, with casual effort. But they were safe, fed, and for the first time in the sector's violent history, protected by something more powerful than faith or weapons. They were protected by a god who appreciated their food, and in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, that was perhaps the strangest miracle of all. 3 weeks passed on Bellarmine III, and for the first time in centuries, the planet experienced something approaching peace. Beerus had claimed residence in a manor overlooking the Azure Bay, a property hastily vacated by a noble family who considered sheltering a god both terrifying and impossibly prestigious. He spent his days alternating between studying dimensional theory in libraries Vex had provided and sampling cuisine from across the planet's diverse regions. The arrangement proved mutually beneficial in unexpected ways. Beerus's presence deterred pirate raids that had plagued the system for decades. Word spread quickly through the sector that Bellarmine III now hosted an entity who could erase ships from existence. Trade improved as merchants recognized the world's sudden strategic security. Even the Administratum, initially outraged by an unsanctioned alien presence, grudgingly acknowledged the tactical advantages after Vex submitted her reports. But the Chaos Gods had not forgotten, and they were patient. On the 23rd day of Beerus's residence, the warp shuddered. Not the normal turbulence of ships entering and exiting, but a deliberate tear. 4 powers working in unprecedented coordination to pierce reality's membrane. The rift opened in Bellarmine III's outer system, beyond the planet's orbital defenses, and through it emerged something the Imperium had not witnessed in 300 years. A united chaos war host. 3 ships translated from the warp, each bearing the marks of different gods. The Bloodletter's Cry, a battle barge dedicated to Khorne, its hull covered in brass and skulls. The Infinite Labyrinth, a cruiser twisted by Tzeentch's influence into impossible geometries that hurt to perceive. The Garden of Decay, a Nurgle plague ship leaking infection into the void simply by existing. And leading them, a vessel that bore all 4 marks equally, the Unmaker's Herald, commanded by a demon prince who had earned the blessing of chaos undivided itself. Aboard the Unmaker's Herald, Demon Prince Jarketh observed Bellarmine III through vision that transcended normal perception. He was ancient by mortal standards, having served the Chaos Gods for 6,000 years across a dozen Black Crusades. He had been a space marine once, a champion of the Emperor's Crusade, before he'd witnessed truths that shattered his faith and rebuilt him as something greater and infinitely worse. "The target is present," Jarketh announced, his voice harmonizing with demonic overtones. Around him, lesser demons materialized from the warp, bloodletters with brass blades, pink horrors cackling with mad glee, plague bearers trailing infectious mist. The gods have decreed his removal. They care not whether he dies or flees, only that his presence here ends. His lieutenants, a Khorne berserker lord, a Tzeentch sorcerer, and a Nurgle plague marine, approached the command throne. They represented an alliance that should have been impossible. The Chaos Gods' rivalry normally prevented such cooperation. But Beerus had accomplished what no Imperial threat ever had. He'd unified chaos through mutual concern. The entity destroyed Kalex without effort, the Tzeentch sorcerer observed, his voice echoing with prescient knowledge. Conventional assault will fail. Even our blessed weaponry may prove inadequate. Tzeentch has shown me futures where this being erases our ships, our demons, our very presence from material space. Then we don't fight conventionally, Jarketh said. The gods have granted us gifts specifically calibrated against this threat. Khorne's blessing shields us from erasure. His rage will sustain our existence even against negation energies. Tzeentch's foresight lets us anticipate attacks before they manifest. Nurgle's endurance means we persist where others would dissolve. And Slaanesh, he smiled, revealing fangs and too many teeth. Slaanesh offers something unexpected. He gestured, and a bound entity was dragged forward by chains forged from condensed warp energy. It was humanoid, female, and beautiful in ways that transcended aesthetic, a demonette of Slaanesh, but something more. Her form shifted constantly, adapting, reflecting whatever the observer found most compelling. "This is Vashira," Jarketh explained. "A demon designed specifically to tempt beings of power. She has corrupted inquisitors, seduced Eldar Farseers, even turned a Grey Knight chapter master once. Slaanesh created her to adapt to any psychology, to find whatever desire exists and amplify it until it becomes weakness. The entity claims to seek food and knowledge," the Tzeentch sorcerer said. "Basic desires, but desires nonetheless. If Vashira can amplify those into obsession, into addiction, we might corrupt him where simple combat would fail." "And if corruption fails?" the Khorne berserker growled, his voice eager for violence. "Then we engage him directly," Jarketh said. "All of us simultaneously, blessed by all 4 gods, with demonic reinforcements numbering in the thousands. The entity is powerful, this we acknowledge. But he is alone, and we are legion. The Chaos War host advanced on Bellarmine III, and every psyker on the planet screamed warnings. Vex received the alert in Governor Vardane's palace, where she'd been coordinating defensive preparations. 3 Chaos vessels entering the system should have been manageable. The planet had orbital defenses, PDF forces, and her own ship remained in high orbit. But the psychic pressure accompanying these ships was unprecedented, a weight against reality itself that suggested powers far beyond normal Chaos incursions. She found Beerus in the Manor's gardens, supervising Chef Blackwell's preparation of a new dish involving local seafood. The god of destruction looked peaceful, almost content, carefully tasting a sauce while offering suggestions about heat application. "Lord Beerus," Vex said, approaching with her retinue. "We have a situation. Chaos forces are entering the system, multiple vessels, heavy demonic presence. They're heading directly for this planet." Beerus looked up from his culinary consultation, his expression shifting from interested to annoyed. "How many?" "3 warships, estimated 10,000 Chaos Space Marines and cultists, unknown demon count but psychic pressure suggests thousands." Vex paused. "Our augurs indicate this is a coordinated assault, all 4 Chaos gods working together, which never happens. Lord Beerus, I believe they're here for you." Beerus stood, brushing off his hands. "Because I killed that one champion?" "That seems like an overreaction. You represent something they cannot corrupt or control," Vex explained. "In the 10,000 years since the heresy, Chaos has never encountered a being of your power who's completely immune to their influence. You're a threat to their fundamental nature, proof that gods can exist without corruption, that power doesn't require damnation. They're not here to conquer Bellarmine III. They're here to eliminate you." "Finally," Beerus said, and his smile showed fangs. "I was wondering when something interesting would happen. 3 weeks of dimensional theory and cuisine testing has been pleasant, but I'm a god of destruction. I need to destroy things occasionally, or I get rusty." "You're not concerned?" Arvex asked, his psychic senses screaming warnings about the approaching fleet. "Should I be?" Beerus looked genuinely curious. "They're mortals empowered by parasites pretending to be gods. I've faced actual divine opponents, beings created specifically for combat by entities that oversee entire multiverses. These Chaos forces are dangerous to you, certainly. But to me," he shrugged, "they're target practice." Vex wanted to warn him, to explain that Chaos was different from normal threats, that corruption could strike in unexpected ways. But she'd witnessed Beerus's power firsthand, seen him erase a planetary infestation in minutes and execute a Chaos champion without effort. If anything in this universe could resist the ruinous powers through sheer existential incompatibility, perhaps it was a god from somewhere else entirely. "Chef Blackwell," Beerus called out, "finish that sauce reduction while I'm gone. When I get back, I want to try the completed dish, and make sure the temperature is precisely controlled this time. We almost overcooked it." "Yes, Lord Beerus," Blackwell replied, somehow more terrified of disappointing the god of destruction's palate than of the incoming Chaos invasion. Beerus rose into the air without ceremony, ascending from the gardens toward the sky. As he climbed, his aura manifested, purple-white energy crackling around him, visible from the ground as a second sun rising. People across Bellarmine III stopped their work to watch, seeing their planetary guardian activate for the first time since his arrival. "Inquisitor," Arvex said quietly as they watched Beerus ascend. If he loses, if chaos somehow corrupts or destroys him, this planet dies. We should evacuate. We don't have time, Vex replied, her augmetic eye tracking Beerus's ascent. And if I'm being honest, brother captain, I don't think evacuation would matter. If Beerus falls to chaos, nowhere in this sector is safe. Better to witness the outcome and prepare for whatever consequences follow. High above them, Beerus broke atmosphere, entering the void where 3 chaos vessels waited. Demons materialized in the space between ships and planet. Thousands of them, impossible entities of living warp stuff given form through malice and faith. Blood letters brandished brass blades. Pink horrors split and reformed. Plague bearers advanced with disease determination. And before them all, Demon Prince Jarketh manifested his full power, his form swelling to massive proportions, wings spreading across kilometers of space, armor forged from all 4 gods' blessings gleaming with impossible light. Entity called Beerus, Jarketh's voice boomed across both material and immaterial space. The gods have judged you incompatible with this reality. Depart, or face annihilation by forces beyond your comprehension. Beerus floated there, examining the demonic host with an expression of professional assessment. He counted numbers, evaluated threat levels, noted the coordination between different chaos factions. Then he cracked his knuckles and smiled. "You brought friends," Beerus said, his voice carrying through void without need for vox amplification. "Good. I hate it when fights end too quickly." The void between Bellarmine III and the Chaos War Host crackled with tension as 2 fundamentally incompatible forms of power faced each other. On one side, the accumulated malice of the warp, demons born from emotion, space marines twisted by corruption, ships that bled reality wherever they passed. On the other, a single being whose existence operated on principles this universe had never encountered. Demon Prince Jarketh struck first, unwilling to allow Beerus the initiative. He raised his blade, a weapon forged from crystallized screams and blessed by all 4 gods, and brought it down in an arc that tore space itself. The cut propagated toward Beerus at speeds that defied physics, a slash that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensions. Beerus caught it, not blocked it, not deflected it, caught the spatial tear between his hands like someone catching a thrown ball. The impossible attack simply stopped, held in place by fingers that refused to acknowledge its reality-warping properties. "Interesting technique," Beerus said, examining the frozen spatial tear with genuine curiosity. "You're cutting through dimensions, not just physical space. Crude, but functional." He squeezed and the tear collapsed, energy dissipating harmlessly. "In my universe, we call that a dimensional slash. Gods use it occasionally. You're using it wrong, though. Too much power, not enough precision." Jarketh recoiled, his demonic mind struggling to process what had happened. That attack had killed Imperial battleships, had carved through reality itself, and this entity had simply caught it. "All forces," Jarketh commanded through the warp link connecting the fleet, "converge and destroy." The demonic host surged forward as one, thousands of entities moving with coordinated fury. Blood letters swung brass blades that could cut through blessed armor. Pink horrors unleashed warp fire that burned souls. Plague bearers spread disease that could corrupt even dead matter. They attacked from all angles simultaneously, a sphere of malice converging on a single point. Beerus's aura exploded outward. Purple-white energy radiated from his body in a perfect sphere, expanding at relativistic speeds. Where it touched demons, they simply ceased, not banished back to the warp, erased. Their essence, their connection to the immaterial realm. Their very concept unmade by destruction energy that treated warp entities the same as physical matter. Within 3 seconds, half the demonic host was gone. Just gone. No corpses, no residual energy, nothing but empty void where thousands of demons had been moments before. The survivors hesitated, experiencing something their kind had never truly felt. Fear. Not the fear they inspired in mortals, but genuine existential terror at confronting a force that could permanently end them. "You're made of belief and emotion," Beerus observed, lowering his hands as his aura settled. "That's actually fascinating. In my universe, gods are created by higher powers and serve specific functions. But you're born from the thoughts of mortals. You're not really gods at all. Your collective psychoses given form. We are eternal," Jarketh roared, his voice carrying the weight of 4 gods' fury. "We are truth beyond the Corpse Emperor's lies. Beerus moved. One moment he was 100 kilometers from the Demon Prince. The next he was directly in front of him, having crossed the distance faster than even warp-enhanced perception could track. He placed one palm against Jarketh's massive chest. "Hakai," Beerus said quietly. Destruction energy flooded into the Demon Prince's form, but Jarketh had prepared for this. The blessings of all 4 Chaos Gods activated simultaneously. Khorne's rage sustained his existence against negation. Tzeentch's sorcery redirected the erasure energy. Nurgle's endurance forced his matter to persist. Slaaneish's perfection maintained his form's integrity. For 3 seconds, blessed by gods and empowered by millennia of corruption, Jarketh resisted complete erasure. Then Beerus increased power from 1% to 5%. The Demon Prince's resistance shattered like glass. His form began to disintegrate from the point of contact, spreading outward as destruction energy consumed matter, energy, and essence simultaneously. He screamed, not in pain, but in genuine disbelief, as his immortal existence ended permanently. "Impossible," Jarketh managed, watching his own dissolution. "The gods blessed me. I cannot die. I am eternal." "You were mortal who made a deal," Beerus corrected, his voice almost gentle. "And deals can be terminated." The Demon Prince ceased to exist, his essence not returning to the warp, but simply unmade, creating a wound in the immaterial realm that would take centuries to heal. The Chaos Gods felt their champion's permanent death and recoiled. This wasn't banishment. This wasn't temporary setback. One of their greatest servants was simply gone, removed from existence so completely that even they couldn't resurrect or reconstitute him. Aboard the 3 Chaos vessels, the remaining forces felt their patron's fear transmit through their connection to the warp. Gods that had never known doubt suddenly questioned whether this assault was wise. But retreat was impossible now. They'd committed too heavily, revealed too much attention. They had to see this through. The Tzeentch sorcerer, a being named Malthazar, who had served the Changer of Ways for 4,000 years, decided on a different approach. If raw power couldn't overcome this entity, perhaps reality manipulation could. He began chanting in languages that predated human speech, words that bent causality and rewrote probability. The warp responded, flooding into material space through tears the sorcerer carefully opened. He wasn't attacking Beerus directly. He was attacking the space around him, transforming vacuum into hostile environment, shifting dimensional frequencies to make the god of destruction's existence incompatible with local reality. Beerus felt the attack, a subtle pressure trying to eject him from this dimensional plane, to shift him out of phase with the material universe. It was clever, sophisticated, exactly the kind of technique that would work against beings who relied on stable reality for existence. "Oh, that's actually smart," Beerus said, recognizing the dimensional manipulation. "You're trying to desync me from this universe's frequency. If I were a normal entity, that might even work." He raised one finger and released a pinpoint burst of ki. The energy traveled across space, struck the Tzeentch sorcerer's position aboard the Infinite Labyrinth, and the entire ship's aft section simply vanished. Malthazar died instantly, his millennia of accumulated knowledge and power ending in a fraction of a second. "But I'm not from this universe to begin with," Beerus continued conversationally, addressing the remaining chaos forces. "Your reality manipulation can't exile someone who's already operating outside your dimensional constants. Good try, though. Better than the Rage Monster approach, at least." The Khorne Berserker Lord, seeing both the Demon Prince and Tzeentch Sorcerer eliminated, decided on the only approach his god patron understood: direct, overwhelming violence. He activated his ship's teleportarium, bringing himself and 300 of his finest berserkers directly into Beerus's vicinity. They materialized in void, sustained by chaos blessings, weapons crackling with warp energy, and charged with coordinated fury. Beerus looked at them, 300 space marines twisted by centuries of corruption, each one individually capable of slaughtering armies, and yawned. "You people really don't learn, do you?" He didn't use destruction energy this time. Instead, he simply moved through them, his physical body impacting their forms with force that defied measurement. Each touch shattered armor, pulped augmented organs, reduced transhuman warriors to component atoms. He moved like a dancer, graceful and precise, turning 300 elite combatants into an expanding cloud of molecular debris in less than 10 seconds. The Khorne Berserker Lord lasted longest, his rage-fueled endurance keeping him functional even as his body disintegrated. He swung his chain axe one final time, the weapon blessed by the blood god himself, aimed at Beerus's neck. Beerus caught the blade with 2 fingers, stopped its momentum completely, and looked at the berserker with something approaching respect. "You're persistent. I appreciate that. In another universe, you might have been a decent warrior. Here, you're just waste material waiting to be disposed of." He flicked the chain axe away. The force sent it spinning into the Bloodletter's Cry, where it punched through 3 decks before lodging in the ship's plasma reactor. The Berserker Lord charged without his weapon, attempting to kill with bare hands enhanced by 10,000 years of martial skill. Beerus placed his palm on the Berserker's chest and released destruction energy directly into his core. The Berserker's fury sustained him for 2 full seconds, longer than any other entity had survived direct Hakai contact. Then even Khorne's blessing failed, and the Lord ceased to exist. With their commanders eliminated, the Chaos forces should have retreated. Standard Imperial doctrine assumed Chaos warriors, despite their corruption, retained tactical sense sufficient to recognize unwinnable battles. But Chaos forces weren't standard military assets. They were fanatics whose patron gods demanded commitment regardless of casualties. The remaining demons surged forward in a second wave, this time supported by Chaos Space Marines who fired from the decks of their vessels. Bolter rounds, plasma bursts, Lascanon beams, all directed at Beerus with coordinated precision. The volume of fire would have destroyed a battle barge. It converged on Beerus's position and simply stopped. His aura deflected everything. Kai-enhanced defense treating blessed ammunition the same as conventional ordnance. "This is getting tedious," Beerus muttered. He raised both hands above his head, and destruction energy began to coalesce. Not a sphere this time, but a wave. Purple-white light built and built, growing until it outshone Bellarmine III's sun, until psychers across 3 systems screamed warnings about the power building in Tantalus sector. On Bellarmine III's surface, Inquisitor Vex watched through orbital surveillance feeds, her augmetic eye recording energy readings that exceeded anything in Imperial classification systems. The power Beerus was gathering registered as equivalent to a supernova, concentrated, controlled, aimed with precision that suggested he could release it without destroying the planet below. "If that hits the Chaos fleet, will the explosion reach us?" Governor Vardane asked, his voice admirably steady despite witnessing godly combat. "Unknown," Vex admitted. "But Lord Beerus has been precise in every demonstration so far. If he's gathering this much power, he believes he can control it. We have to trust that. Trust a god from another universe to not accidentally destroy our world while fighting off our enemies," Vardane said. "This is either the greatest leap of faith in Imperial history or the stupidest." "Both," Arvex said quietly. "Definitely both." In the void, Beerus finished gathering power. The sphere of destruction energy above his hands had grown to the size of a small moon, pulsing with barely contained force. Demons that approached too close simply ceased to exist, unmade by proximity to energy that denied existence itself. "I'll be honest," Beerus called out to the Chaos fleet. "I'm not enjoying this. You're forcing me to destroy you without any challenge, any entertainment value. It's like crushing insects, necessary sometimes, but not satisfying." He paused, looking at the sphere of energy. "But you came here with intent to kill me, to corrupt or remove me from this universe. I respect commitment, even stupid commitment, so I'll give you credit for trying." He released the sphere, not throwing it, but simply letting it expand. The destruction energy propagated outward in a controlled wave, spreading across the battlefield like dawn chasing night. Where it touched demons, they unmade. Where it reached Chaos vessels, their hulls dissolved. Where it encountered warp rifts, the tiers sealed, reality reasserting itself with violent finality. The Bloodletter's cry tried to activate its warp drive, to flee into the immaterium before the destruction wave reached it. The engines engaged, tearing open a portal to escape, but the destruction energy was faster. It caught the ship mid-transition, 1/3 in material space and 2/3 in the warp. The vessel shattered across dimensional boundaries, pieces existing in both realms simultaneously before ceasing to exist in either. The Garden of Decay attempted a different strategy. Nurgle's blessing should allow persistence, should let the plague ship endure through sheer resilience what it couldn't avoid through speed. The ship's hull, already more organism than machine, tried to adapt, to evolve resistance to destruction energy. For a moment, it seemed to work. The wave slowed as it encountered the ship, struggling against endurance, empowered by a god of entropy. Beerus frowned, noticing the resistance. Interesting, that one's tougher. He focused, increasing the wave's intensity specifically around the Garden of Decay. The destruction energy concentrated, pressure building until even Nurgle's blessing couldn't sustain the ship's existence. The Garden of Decay collapsed inward, imploding rather than simply vanishing, creating a temporary void that pulled in debris from across the battlefield before the space normalized. The infinite labyrinth, already damaged from losing its aft section, tried to use Tzeentch's sorcery to reality hop, jumping between dimensions rapidly enough that the destruction wave couldn't track its position. For approximately 3 seconds, it worked. The ship flickered in and out of material space, evading complete erasure through quantum uncertainty. Then Beerus did something unexpected. He reached out with his Kai-sense, tracking the ship across dimensional frequencies, reading its position not through physical sensors, but through direct energy perception. When the infinite labyrinth materialized for a microsecond, Beerus was ready. He fired a finger beam, a lance of pure destruction energy, no thicker than a bolter round, but concentrated to impossible density. The beam caught the labyrinth mid-flicker, punched through its reality-shifting defenses, and carved straight through the ship's core. The Chaos Cruiser had time to materialize fully one final time before it split in half, both sections tumbling through space before secondary explosions consumed what the destruction beam hadn't already unmade. Silence fell across the battlefield. Where 3 Chaos vessels and 10,000 corrupted warriors had existed minutes before, there was only void. Clean, empty void. No debris fields, no corpse clouds, no residual warp taint. Beerus had erased the entire assault force so completely that even their impact on local space-time vanished. In the warp, the 4 Chaos Gods felt the absolute nature of their defeat and experienced something new, respect mixed with caution. This entity couldn't be corrupted. He couldn't be killed by conventional means. Even coordinated assault by their finest champions had failed absolutely. He was, essentially, a natural predator to their existence, a being whose very purpose countered everything they represented. They would not attempt this again, not directly, perhaps in centuries, with different strategies, different champions. But for now, Beerus was classified as a force to avoid rather than confront. On Bellarmine III, the population emerged from emergency shelters to see their sky clear of threat, their guardian god descending from orbit with the casual air of someone returning from an errand. No celebration, no triumph, just a deity completing a task and ready to resume his interrupted activities. Beerus landed in the Manor Gardens where Chef Blackwell had somehow, impossibly, continued working throughout the orbital battle. The sauce reduction was complete, perfectly prepared, waiting for review. "Excellent timing," Beerus said, sitting down at the prepared table as though he hadn't just erased an entire Chaos war host. "Let's see if you got the temperature right this time." Vex arrived moments later, her retinue spreading through the gardens on security protocols that now seemed absurdly inadequate. She watched Beerus taste the dish, watched him nod approval, watched a god from another universe bond with a human chef over properly reduced sauce, while the void above still radiated residual destruction energy. "Lord Beerus," Vex began, "the Chaos Forces—" "Were annoying," Beerus interrupted, taking another bite. "But manageable. Though I'll admit, that last ship's reality hopping was clever. If they'd all used that strategy simultaneously, it might have taken me a whole 15 minutes to destroy them." He looked up at Vex, his expression serious. "Your Chaos Gods learned something today. They learned I can permanently destroy their champions. Not banish, not temporarily defeat. Actually, permanently erase them from existence. They won't bother me again. They're parasites, but they're not stupid parasites. You've made yourself a permanent enemy of the ruinous powers," Vex said, uncertain whether to be grateful or terrified. "I already was," Beerus corrected. "I just made it official. Besides, they started it by interrupting my meal. That's unforgivable." He gestured at the table. "Chef Blackwell, this sauce is perfect. 7.5 out of 10 for the complete dish. You're improving." Blackwell bowed, accepting the praise with the dignity of someone who'd continued cooking while gods warred in orbit above him. Arvex approached Vex quietly, his voice pitched for her ears only. "Inquisitor, we need to discuss the strategic implications. If Beerus can permanently eliminate Chaos Champions, if the ruinous powers themselves fear direct confrontation with him, then he's potentially the greatest strategic asset the Imperium has ever possessed," Vex finished. "And also the greatest threat if he ever decides we've annoyed him sufficiently. This changes everything, Brother Captain. Everything." Above them, Bellarmine III's sky cleared as residual destruction energy dissipated. The planet's people looked up and saw stars, brilliant, unobscured, free from the taint that had threatened their world. They didn't understand what had happened, didn't comprehend the cosmic forces that had clashed above their atmosphere. But they understood one thing: their world was safe. And the purple-skinned god who judged their food so harshly had proven himself their protector in the most absolute way possible. In the manor gardens, Beerus finished his meal and leaned back, satisfied. "Not bad," he said to no one in particular. "I might actually miss this place when I figure out how to leave." If he figured out how to leave, Vex thought. And in that uncertainty lay both hope and danger beyond anything the Imperium had faced in 10 millennia. The destruction of the unified Chaos war host sent shockwaves through the galaxy far beyond Bellarmine III. Astropathic messages carried news of the battle across Imperial space, each retelling growing more elaborate, more mythological. A being from beyond reality who could permanently unmake chaos itself. A god who judged civilizations by their cuisine and destroyed their enemies as casual exercise. The stories varied in detail, but agreed on fundamentals. Something new had entered the 41st millennium, and the strategic balance was fundamentally altered. 6 weeks after the battle, representatives from across the Imperium began arriving at Bellarmine III. Not armies or invasion forces, diplomats, scholars, priests. The ecclesiarchy sent Cardinal Matthias Severin to determine whether Beerus represented divine intervention or ultimate heresy. The Adeptus Mechanicus dispatched Archmagos Dominus Kellex III to study the dimensional theory Beerus had been researching. Even the Officio Assassinorum sent an observer, though they had the wisdom to remain hidden rather than announce their presence. Beerus tolerated the attention with varying degrees of annoyance. He met with Cardinal Severin for exactly 10 minutes before the conversation devolved into theological arguments that ended with Beerus stating flatly, "Your emperor might be powerful, but he's not a god by any definition I recognize. He's a human psyker who achieved near godhood through 10,000 years of sacrifice. There's a difference." The cardinal left either enlightened or horrified, possibly both. The Mechanicus delegation fared better. Archmagos Kellex III brought technical documentation about Geller field technology, historical records of dimensional breach incidents, and even fragmentary data from the dark age of technology. Beerus spent 3 days reviewing the materials with genuine interest, his divine perspective cutting through mysticism to identify actual principles buried beneath superstition. "Your ancestors understood dimensional mechanics better than you do," Beerus told Kellex III, gesturing at a data slate displaying pre-imperial technical documents. "They built devices that could punch through dimensional barriers, create stable portals between universe-adjacent layers. Then they lost the knowledge and replaced it with religion. The Omnissiah's mysteries are beyond mortal comprehension," Kellex III replied, the closest his augmented voice could come to defensive. "No, they're just complicated," Beerus corrected. "Complicated isn't the same as mystical. Your problem is that you treat technology like faith instead of function. If you'd approached this systematically instead of ritually, you'd have rebuilt interstellar travel that doesn't require flying through hell." Despite, or perhaps because of, Beerus's bluntness, the Mechanicus delegation found the exchange valuable. They departed with new perspectives on ancient technology and a formal request. Would Lord Beerus consent to consulting on certain prohibited archaeotech devices, specifically those related to dimensional manipulation? The compensation would be access to imperial culinary resources across multiple sectors. Beerus agreed, with the stipulation that any food provided must meet minimum quality standards. "I'm not wasting my time on theories if you're feeding me industrial waste," he said flatly. But the most significant visitor arrived without announcement, without diplomatic protocol. One evening, as Beerus sat in the manor gardens watching Bellarmine III's twin moons rise, he sensed something unexpected, a presence that registered as psychic but fundamentally different from the warp signatures he'd encountered previously. He turned to find an Eldar standing 20 meters away, having appeared without sound or obvious transportation. She wore armor of wraithbone and psychic crystal, bore a shuriken pistol at her hip, and carried herself with the ancient confidence of a species that had once ruled the galaxy. But what caught Beerus's attention was her psychic signature, not chaotic like human psychers, not tainted like chaos worshippers, but structured, controlled, achingly refined. "You're different from the others," Beerus said, not moving from his seated position. "Your energy manipulation is more sophisticated, less brute force, more precision." The Eldar bowed slightly, a gesture that carried millennia of cultural weight. "I am Farseer Elisanda of Craftworld Ulthwé. I have walked the paths of fate for 3 centuries, and every thread I follow leads to you, Lord Beerus. You are an anomaly beyond anything the skeins of destiny have ever contained." "Fate reading," Beerus said, interested despite himself. "We have that in my universe too. The Supreme Kai of Time manages temporal streams. Never been a fan of it personally. Takes the surprise out of everything." "Your very existence makes fate reading impossible," Elisanda said, stepping closer but maintaining respectful distance. "When I attempt to divine futures that involve you, I see only paradox. Probability collapses. Causality loops. You should not be here, yet you are. Your presence rewrites possibility itself. That's because I'm from outside this universe's causal structure, Beerus explained, gesturing for the Farseer to sit. She did, settling onto a garden bench with preternatural grace. Your fate threads, or whatever you call them, operate within this reality's rules. I don't. So when you try to predict my actions using local causality, the math breaks. Elisanda studied him with eyes that had witnessed the fall of civilizations. You defeated a unified chaos war host alone. You permanently destroyed entities that should be immortal. You operate outside the warp's influence. The question my people have debated since your arrival is simple. Are you salvation or extinction? Probably neither, Beerus said honestly. I'm not here to save your species or destroy it. I'm here accidentally, trying to find a way home. Everything else, helping the Imperium, destroying chaos forces, whatever else people attribute to me, is just me dealing with immediate annoyances while I work on the actual problem. And yet your immediate annoyances reshape the strategic balance of entire sectors, Elisanda noted. The Tyrannid splinter fleet you eliminated would have consumed 17 worlds before Imperial forces could contain it. The Chaos War host you destroyed was being assembled for a Black Crusade that would have shattered subsector defenses. Your casual interventions saved billions of lives. Unintentionally, Beerus clarified. I destroyed the Tyrannids because I was asked to, and they were pests. I destroyed the Chaos forces because they interrupted my meal and attacked first. I'm not doing this for altruistic reasons. And that, Elisanda said quietly, is what makes you terrifying. You reshape galactic history as side effects of personal convenience. What happens when your convenience no longer aligns with others' survival? Beerus was silent for a moment, considering the question seriously. In my universe, I'm accountable. There's a Supreme Kai who acts as creation to my destruction, balance. There's Whis, my attendant, who can actually stop me if I go too far. There's even an Omni King who could erase me from existence if I became a problem. But here, he looked at the stars above Bellarmine III. Here, I have no oversight, no counterbalance. If I decided tomorrow to destroy this entire sector, probably nothing could stop me. Does that concern you? Elisanda asked. Of course, Beerus said. I'm a god of destruction, not a monster. My purpose is to maintain cosmic balance through selective annihilation, to remove civilizations that have become threats or outlived their usefulness. But that requires judgment, wisdom, context. Without oversight, without accountability, I could make mistakes. Destroy things that shouldn't be destroyed, become the very thing I'm supposed to prevent. Elisande realized she was witnessing something rare, a being of ultimate power who understood the danger of absolute authority. What will you do? What I've been doing, Beerus replied. Stay here, study dimensional theory, hope I find a way home. In the meantime, I'll destroy obvious threats, tyrannids, chaos invasions, things that clearly need destroying. But I won't play emperor. I won't join your politics or your wars. I'll remain an independent force, answerable to myself, trying to apply the principles I learned in my own universe to situations here. And if you cannot return home, Elisanda pressed, if you're permanently stranded in this reality. Beerus didn't answer immediately. The question had been haunting him for weeks, growing more insistent as his dimensional research revealed just how difficult universe traversal truly was. His universe and this one operated on fundamentally different frequencies. Crossing between them required power beyond anything available here. Required navigation tools that didn't exist. Required understanding of multiversal structure that these people had never even theorized. "Then I'll adapt," Beerus finally said. "I'll establish my own territory, maintain my own standards. Maybe I'll take on students, teach some of these warriors proper energy manipulation. Maybe I'll open the multiverse's first interdimensional restaurant once your chefs figure out how to cook at acceptable standards." He smiled slightly. "Or maybe I'll just sleep for a few centuries and see what changes when I wake up." Elisanda stood, recognizing the conversation had reached its natural conclusion. "The Eldar will not interfere with you, Lord Beerus. We recognize something humans often miss. Some forces are better left alone. But know this, if you ever need knowledge about dimensional manipulation, about reality warping technology from before the fall, Craftworld Ulthway offers consultation. We have nothing to gain by your enmity, and potentially much to gain by your neutrality." "I'll remember that," Beerus said. "And Farseer, your energy manipulation really is impressive. If you ever want to discuss Kai techniques versus psychic methodology, I'd be interested. Professional to professional." Elisanda bowed again, deeper this time. "That would be enlightening." Then she simply wasn't there anymore, having stepped out of material reality with the practiced ease of someone who'd mastered psychic travel. Beerus sat alone in the gardens, watching the moons and contemplating his situation. He'd been in this universe for nearly 3 months now. 3 months of substandard food, primitive technology, endless warfare, and civilizations so focused on survival that they'd forgotten how to actually live. It was exhausting, but it was also, in its own way, interesting. 8 months after his arrival in the 41st millennium, Beerus had settled into a routine that would have been impossible to predict during his initial crash on Metallurgicus Prime. He maintained residence on Bellarmine III, which had become something of a neutral zone. Chaos forces avoided it absolutely. Tyranid hive fleets altered their course around the system. Even Orc Wars seemed to instinctively recognize that attacking this particular world would end poorly. The manor overlooking Azure Bay had been expanded, modified to Beerus's specifications. A proper training ground where he practiced kata to maintain his combat edge. A library filled with every text on dimensional theory the Imperium could provide. And most importantly, a kitchen where Chef Blackwell, now assisted by 3 apprentices, worked constantly to develop dishes that might finally achieve a rating above 7 out of 10. Inquisitor Vex visited monthly, bringing reports on threats that might require Beerus's attention and updates on dimensional research. Most she handled through normal channels. She'd discovered that Beerus genuinely meant what he said about not wanting to be a weapon pointed at every problem. But occasionally, something warranted his intervention. Necron Tomb World Awakening in the Athena sector, Vex reported during one such visit, displaying hololithic data. Their technology includes dimensional phase shifting. Thought you might be interested from a research perspective. Beerus examined the data with the clinical interest of someone who had learned to navigate Imperial information systems. Necrons. Those are the machine skeleton species, right? The ones who transferred their consciousness into metal bodies. Correct. They possess technology from 60 million years ago, predating humanity. Some of their devices manipulate reality at fundamental levels, If anyone in this universe has knowledge applicable to your situation, it's them, Beerus finished. Fine, I'll investigate. But if their technology is all death rays and strategic-scale murder machines, I'm leaving. I'm not wading through an army of killer robots for knowledge that doesn't exist. 3 days later, Beerus stood in the Tomb World's primary vault, surrounded by Necron warriors who had ceased hostilities the moment they'd attempted to attack him, and discovered their Gauss flares did nothing. The Necron Lord, a being of ancient malice, wearing a body of living metal, regarded Beerus with optics that had witnessed the war in heaven. "You are not of this reality," the Necron Lord said, its voice resonating through dimensional frequencies. "Your energy signature does not match this universe's fundamental constants. Explain." "I'm from somewhere else," Beerus said, examining a Necron artifact that registered as some kind of dimensional anchor device. "Got knocked here accidentally, trying to figure out how to leave. Your people supposedly have reality manipulation technology. I'm hoping you have something useful." The Necron Lord was silent for a long moment, its processors considering this entity who could survive in absolute vacuum, who'd walked through defensive systems that had killed space marine companies, who'd treated plasma weapons like mild irritants. "The Dolmen Gates," it finally said. "Ancient technology allowing travel through the webway. Not dimensional traversal in the sense you require, but adjacent principles. Come." Beerus followed the Necron Lord deeper into the tomb complex, past chambers filled with sleeping warriors, through corridors of living metal that shifted to accommodate their passage. They reached a vault where a massive archway stood, covered in glyphs that hurt to look at directly. Mathematics made physical, equations inscribed in matter that didn't fully exist in three-dimensional space. This technology was stolen from the old ones, the Necron Lord explained, gesturing at the gate. They created the webway, a network of tunnels through reality, connecting disparate locations instantaneously. We Necrons learned to access it through force, the principles involved. It paused, its optics focusing on Beerus. "You would understand them. Your nature operates on similar dimensional manipulation, though more refined, more organic." Beerus studied the gate with growing interest, his key sense analyzing the energy flows, the dimensional folding, the way the device punched through real space into something adjacent. This doesn't go between universes. It goes between locations within this universe by traveling through an adjacent dimensional layer. Correct, but the principles scale. A sufficiently powerful entity with proper understanding of dimensional frequencies could potentially force a gate to reach beyond universal boundaries. Not exit this universe entirely. That would require power beyond even our civilization's peak. But perhaps contact another reality. Establish communication. Beacon your location to those searching for you. For the first time since arriving in the 41st millennium, Beerus felt something like hope. Not the solution, not a direct path home, but a possibility. A theoretical framework that might, with enough study and power application, let him signal Whis across dimensional barriers. "I need to study this," Beerus said. "Not take it, not destroy it, just understand it, in exchange." He looked at the Necron Lord, recognizing intelligence that predated humanity by eons. "In exchange, I'll deal with whatever's annoying you. Within reason." The Necron Lord's optics flickered, possibly the equivalent of amusement. "We desire nothing save our ancient kingdom restored, and vengeance against those who wronged us. But we recognize value in neutrality with one such as you. Study as you wish. But understand, Necron technology is not easily understood by flesh beings. I'm not a flesh being, Beerus corrected. I'm a god who happens to have flesh. There's a difference. Over the following months, Beerus split his time between Bellarmine III and the Necron tomb world, which the ancient machines called Zondrek's Sanctum. He studied Dolmen Gate technology with the same intense focus he'd once applied to mastering Ultra Instinct. The mathematics were complex but logical, the principles scalable, the applications limited only by available power, and power was something Beerus possessed in abundance. He began experimenting carefully with dimensional manipulation. Small tests at first, creating temporary portals between rooms, folding space to travel instantly across the planet's surface. Then larger applications, reaching through dimensional barriers to touch the webway's structure, feeling the ancient network that connected the galaxy like cosmic arteries. And in those moments, testing power and theory simultaneously, Beerus felt something. A distant presence, impossibly far away, yet somehow familiar. It lasted only microseconds, barely long enough to register, but he recognized it. Whis. His attendant was searching for him, sweeping across dimensional frequencies, looking for Beerus's signature. But the barriers between universes were thick, the interference intense. Even Wiss's power couldn't punch through them casually. But if Beerus could amplify his signal, if he could create a dimensional resonance powerful enough to transcend universal boundaries. I need more power, Beerus told the Necron Lord during one study session. Not to create the portal. I have enough power for that. But to make it detectable from another universe, to create a signal strong enough that Whis can triangulate my position. How much power? The Necron Lord asked. Planetary scale release, Beerus said. Controlled, focused entirely into dimensional resonance rather than physical destruction. But enough that every psychic sensitive in this sector will probably sense it. That will attract attention, the Necron Lord observed. Chaos will notice. The Imperium will mobilize. Tyranid hive fleets may alter course to investigate. Let them, Beerus said. I'll only need a few seconds. By the time anyone responds, either I'll be gone or I'll be defending myself. And I'm very good at defending myself. He began preparations, informing Vex of his intentions. She accepted the news with the professional calm of someone who had learned to expect the impossible. When? 3 days, Beerus said. I need to coordinate with astronomical positioning. Certain stellar alignments will strengthen the dimensional resonance. And I want to say goodbye to Chef Blackwell. He's been working on a new dish specifically as a farewell meal. Will you return? Vex asked. If you succeed, if you reach your universe, will you ever come back? Beerus considered the question seriously. Probably not intentionally, but dimensional barriers are tricky. I might end up here again by accident. And if I do, he smiled slightly. At least I'll know where to find decent food, relatively speaking. 3 days later, on Bellarmine III's highest mountain peak, Beerus stood before a modified Dolmen Gate, Necron technology enhanced by his own understanding, powered by his key, calibrated to frequencies beyond this universe's normal spectrum. Around him, defense forces had evacuated the area for 100 kilometers. Above, Vex's ship maintained observation position, recording everything. Beerus raised his hands, and power began to build. Not destruction energy this time. Creation energy. The opposite force he rarely used. Purple-white light became gold-white. Transformation energy that could remake rather than unmake. He poured it into the modified gate, and the device activated with a sound that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The portal opened, not into the webway, but through it, using the ancient network as a dimensional amplifier. Energy flowed outward, propagating across reality's membrane, punching through barriers between universes with force that made the warp itself scream. Across the galaxy, every psyker felt the moment, a tear in everything, a signal broadcasting from Bellarmine III that transcended normal space-time. And somewhere beyond dimensional barriers, in a universe operating on different frequencies, we stopped his search. His staff glowed, registering a signal that shouldn't exist. Beerus's energy signature, amplified beyond normal limits, transmitted from an adjacent reality. "Found you," Whis said with satisfaction. He adjusted his staff's dimensional frequencies, began preparations for a rescue that would require careful navigation through hostile universal terrain. On Bellarmine III, Beerus held the portal open, maintaining power output sufficient to reshape continents. The signal propagated, strengthened, reached beyond this universe's boundaries. He felt Whis's response, distant but growing closer, his attendant now having a fixed point to navigate toward. It would take time, days, maybe weeks, but the connection was established. Rescue was inevitable. Beerus lowered his hands, and the portal collapsed. The mountain peak beneath him was scorched clean, stone transformed to glass by residual energy. He descended to where Vex waited, her expression unreadable. "It worked," Beerus said simply. "My attendant knows where I am. He'll come get me soon." "Then this is goodbye," Vex said. Eventually, Beerus agreed. "But Weiss needs time to navigate dimensional barriers safely. I'll be here for another week or two. Enough time for Chef Blackwell to serve that farewell meal he's been planning." He looked at the sky above Bellarmine III, at stars he'd grown almost familiar with over 8 months of stranding. This universe was brutal, desperate, drowning in endless war and corruption. Its food was mediocre at best. Its technology was primitive superstition. Its gods were parasites feeding on mortal belief. But it had shown him something unexpected. What civilization looked like when survival was never guaranteed. When every day required conscious choice to persist rather than surrender to entropy. These people fought, suffered, died, and fought again with determination that would have impressed even Universe 7's greatest warriors. "When I get home," Beerus said, "I'll remember this place. Not fondly. It's too much of a mess for fondness. But with respect. You people survived things that would destroy better civilizations. That counts for something." "Coming from a god of destruction," Vex replied. "I'll take that as the highest compliment possible." Beerus smiled, showing fangs. "It is." 19 days after Beerus established dimensional contact, Whis arrived. He didn't announce his presence with dramatic portals or reality-shaking power displays. He simply appeared in the manor gardens as though he'd been there all along, his staff glowing softly with angelic energy, his expression carrying the patient amusement of someone who just solved a particularly troublesome puzzle. "Lord Beerus," Whis said pleasantly, "you've had quite the adventure, I see. I do apologize for the delay in retrieving you. Dimensional navigation through hostile universal barriers proved more complex than anticipated. Beerus looked up from the breakfast Chef Blackwell had prepared. A final meal featuring the best ingredients Bellarmine III could provide. 19 days Whis. I've been stranded in a universe where the food barely rates 6 out of 10, where civilization is held together with faith and desperation, and where parasites pretend to be gods. 19 days since I called for pickup. And yet, you seem relatively content, Whis observed, examining the garden with interest. You've established residence, formed relationships, even affected local strategic balance. One might almost think you enjoyed yourself. It was educational, Beerus admitted grudgingly. This universe operates on completely different principles than ours. Their gods aren't appointed. They're born from belief. Their technology is ritual rather than science. And somehow they've survived 10,000 years of absolute catastrophe through sheer stubborn refusal to die. He paused, taking a bite of grilled fish. Also, I found a chef who's actually talented. Given proper ingredients from our universe, he might achieve 8 out of 10. We smiled. Shall we bring him along? I'm certain Universe 7 has a room for another culinary artist. He'd never survive the transition, Beerus said, though his tone suggested he'd considered it. Humans from this universe are adapted to their reality's frequencies. Moving between universes would likely kill him. Better he stays here, continues developing his craft. Inquisitor Vex approached the garden entrance, having been summoned by palace guards reporting an angelic entity manifesting without authorization. She studied Whis with her augmetic eye, recording energy signatures that made absolutely no sense. Power that exceeded even Beerus's baseline readings. Contained within a frame that appeared almost delicate. You must be the attendant, Vex said. Lord Beerus mentioned you. Whis at your service, the angel replied with a polite bow. And you're Inquisitor Vex, the human who's been managing Lord Beerus's stay with admirable competence. He speaks well of your pragmatism. He destroyed a Tyranid splinter fleet, eliminated a unified Chaos war host, and established diplomatic relations with the Necrons, Vex said flatly. Calling that management feels inadequate. Yet you recognized early that controlling him was impossible and adapted accordingly, Whis noted. That demonstrates wisdom beyond what most civilizations achieve. Lord Beerus can be difficult when people attempt to command rather than cooperate. I noticed, Vex said dryly. Beerus stood, brushing off his hands. Chef Blackwell, he called toward the manor. The chef emerged, his apprentices following nervously. This is my attendant, Whis. I'm leaving now, returning to my proper universe, where food doesn't taste like industrial compromise. Blackwell bowed deeply. It has been an honor, Lord Beerus. I hope my cuisine, inadequate as it was, provided some small comfort during your stay. You have genuine talent, Beerus said, and coming from him, it was revelation. You work with limited ingredients in a dying universe and still create dishes worth eating. That's skill. Keep practicing, keep learning, and maybe someday this universe will produce food that actually deserves proper ratings. He turned to Vex, his expression more serious. A few things before I leave. First, those dimensional theories we discussed. They're sound. Your Mechanicus can develop them further if they stop treating science like religion. Second, the Necron Lord on Zondrek's sanctum has agreed to maintain neutrality with Imperial forces in his sector. Don't abuse that arrangement. Third, he paused, choosing words carefully. Your emperor isn't a god by my universe's standards, but he's close enough that the distinction barely matters. Whatever he's become after 10,000 years on that throne, it's impressive. Tell him I said so, if he still hears prayers. I'll include that in my report, Vex said, knowing full well the ecclesiarchy would debate those words for centuries. Will you ever return? Probably not intentionally, Beerus said. But dimensional barriers are unpredictable. If I end up here again... He smiled slightly. At least I'll know where to find acceptable food and decent conversation. Wise raised his staff, and reality began to ripple around them. Not a violent tearing like chaos portals, not the calculated precision of Necron gates, but something gentler. Dimensional frequencies adjusting, two entities preparing to slip between universal boundaries, like swimmers moving between ocean currents. Before we depart, Whis said to Vex, a small gift. Lord Beerus mentioned your interest in dimensional theory. This, he tapped his staff, and a small crystal materialized, floating toward Vex. Contains basic principles of universe-adjacent travel. Nothing your civilization can replicate with current technology, but perhaps someday it will prove useful. Consider it payment for hosting Lord Beerus these past months. Vex caught the crystal, her augmetic eye immediately analyzing energy patterns beyond anything Imperial science had documented. Thank you. This is invaluable. One last thing, Beerus said, looking at the assembled group. Vex and her retinue, Chef Blackwell and his apprentices, Governor Vardane who'd arrived to witness the departure. This universe is broken, wounded at fundamental levels by ancient wars and corrupting powers. But it's not dead. Not while people like you keep fighting, keep creating, keep refusing to surrender to entropy. That's worth something, maybe even worth protecting. He paused, then added with his usual bluntness. But your food still needs serious work. Tell your civilizations to spend less time on warfare and more time on agriculture. The Emperor protects, sure, but proper seasoning helps too. With that final pronouncement, Whis activated his staff fully. The dimensional barrier between Universe 7 and the 41st millennium thinned, became permeable, open just enough for two entities to slip through. Beerus and Whis began to fade, their forms becoming translucent as they moved between realities. Farewell, Inquisitor, Whis called out as they vanished. Do take care of this universe. Lord Beerus has grown oddly fond of it. Then they were gone, simply absent, having moved from this reality to another with the ease of someone stepping between rooms. The dimensional rift sealed behind them, reality reasserting itself, leaving only residual energy that would take days to dissipate. Vex stood in the gardens, holding a crystal containing knowledge beyond Imperial comprehension, watching the space where a god had been moments before. Around her, Bellarmine III continued its daily rhythms, farmers tending fields, chefs preparing meals, children playing in streets that had almost been battlefields. What do we tell Terra? Brother Captain Arvex asked quietly. The truth, Vex said. A god from another universe was stranded here temporarily. He destroyed some of our enemies, improved our dimensional theory, critiqued our food, and left. The strategic implications will occupy the Inquisition for decades. The theological implications might split the ecclesiarchy, and the culinary implications. She looked at Chef Blackwell, who stood holding a data slate containing every recipe Beerus had suggested improvements for. The culinary implications might actually improve Imperial cuisine. Stranger things have happened. She turned to leave, then paused. And we tell them one more thing, that for 8 months, the 41st millennium hosted a being who could have destroyed us all on a whim, but chose not to. Not because he feared us, not because we controlled him, but because he had standards. And somehow, despite everything, we met them. Barely, but we met them. Will he return? Vardane asked. Vex looked at the sky, at stars that seemed somehow brighter after Beerus's departure. I hope not. This universe survives on the edge of catastrophe. We don't need gods from elsewhere making things more complicated. She smiled slightly. But if he does come back, at least we know how to keep him satisfied. Good food, interesting problems, and the wisdom not to waste his time with stupidity. In the months and years that followed, Bellarmine III became a place of pilgrimage. Not religious pilgrimage. The ecclesiarchy never quite decided whether Beerus was holy or heretical, but scholarly. The planet where dimensional theory advanced 100 years in 8 months. The world that had hosted a god and survived. The gardens where Inquisitor Vex first negotiated with a power beyond imperial classification. Chef Blackwell's techniques spread across the sector, raising culinary standards incrementally. The dimensional theories Beerus had helped develop, combined with Wyss's crystal, eventually led to improvements in Geller field technology. And the Necron Lord on Zondrek's sanctum maintained its promised neutrality, occasionally even sharing technological insights with Mechanicus delegations bold enough to visit. The Chaos Gods never again attempted coordinated assault against entities they couldn't classify. Tyranid hive fleets learned, in their strange biological way, that some threats were better avoided than consumed. Even the orcs, whose understanding of events was limited at best, developed legends about the purple god what punches real good. Beerus had departed, but his impact remained, a ripple in the 41st millennium's endless ocean of war, a brief moment when something from beyond showed this broken universe that power without corruption was possible, that gods could exist without demanding worship, and that sometimes the greatest threats came from beings who simply wanted decent food and interesting conversation. And in Universe 7, as Beerus settled back into his proper reality with relief, he carried something unexpected. Respect for a civilization that survived against impossible odds, that created beauty in the face of endless horror, and that proved worthy of existence even by a god of destruction's harsh standards. Well, Lord Beerus, we said as they approached Beerus's planet, I trust you've learned something from this experience. I learned that my universe has significantly better food, Beerus replied. Also that I should check your dimensional calculations more carefully before inter-universal travel. And nothing else, Wyss asked with knowing amusement. Beerus was silent for a moment, then smiled slightly. I learned that civilizations don't need appointed gods to be worth preserving. Sometimes they earn that right themselves through sheer stubborn refusal to die. The 41st millennium is a mess. He paused, considering, but it's their mess, and they defend it with everything they have. High praise indeed, Wyss observed. Don't tell them that, Beerus said quickly. Their food is still terrible. They don't deserve compliments until they fix that. But in his divine consciousness, where even gods kept private thoughts, Beerus remembered gardens overlooking the Azure Bay, remembered a chef who worked with passion despite limited ingredients, remembered an inquisitor who chose wisdom over pride, and remembered a universe that continued fighting long after reasonable civilizations would have surrendered. He remembered, and he knew that if he ever found himself in the 41st millennium again, accidentally or otherwise, he would protect it. After all, someone had to make sure they survived long enough to improve their cuisine.